Hey guys, tonight, we're stepping into the heavy, mud-caked boots of a World War II soldier, and starting with something you probably take for granted every single day, dinner. Trust me, after tonight, you'll never look at your plate of food quite the same way again. Picture this: it's pouring rain, icy drops sliding down your collar, soaking deep into every thread of your uniform. You've just crawled through a flooded forest, your backpack feels like a pile of bricks, your rifle clutched tightly in your hands, and your stomach completely empty. Waiting at your next stop is a ration tin cracked open yesterday, a hunk of cold canned meat, and if you're lucky, a piece of bread with a hint of mold around the edges. But before we wade deeper into this wartime menu of mud and misery, if you think these strange, quiet slices of history are worth whispering through the night, please like this video and subscribe to the channel. And if you're listening from a warm bed, in a dry and peaceful room, leave a comment with your location and the current time. It always warms me to imagine our little map, drawn not with battle lines, but with breath and sleep. Now then, lower the lights. Turn the fan to its softest setting for a gentle background hum. Take a slow, steady breath. And together, we'll wade through the mud, the rain, and the hunger, like a real soldier. On tonight's journey, your hands tremble from fatigue and hunger as you pry open the dented tin. What meets your eyes isn't warmth, or comfort, or anything that should rightfully be called a meal. Just a cold, gelatinous mass, beans soaked in thick, uninviting sauce. You reach for the next cracker, though it resembles a chunk of dried chalk more than food. It snaps with a brittle crack, sharp enough to be used as firewood. And the meat, if you can call it that, huddles in the corner of the can like a pale, trembling lump of jelly, looking as if it might flinch if touched. You probably won't survive this meal with your pride intact. You might not even finish it without questioning your life choices. You reach for the small, primitive can opener clip to your belt pouch. It's not much to look at, barely more than a jagged sliver of metal with a foldable twist handle. The troops called it a John Wayne, for reasons no one can quite agree on. Some say it was because only someone as tough as John Wayne could manage to use it properly without slicing their fingers open. Others just figured it sounded good. Either way, you clamp it onto the lid, twist hard, and it lets out a series of metallic groans and high-pitched squeals as the blade punches through the seal. The air is instantly filled with the faint scent of cold beans mixed with the sharp tang of metal. That aroma doesn't mingle well with the lingering odor of your wet wool uniform, which smells like a mixture of mildew, sweat, and misery. Next, you dig out the cracker. Officially, it's referred to in the field manual as a hardtack biscuit, but most soldiers simply call it teethbreaker. It's dense, dry, and has the kind of brittle texture that makes your jaw hurt just thinking about it. You briefly consider dipping it into the bean sludge, hoping for some softening effect. But in your heart, you know it's pointless. That would only create a tragic fusion of two unappetizing things, each ruining the other in new and terrible ways. This, in all its uninspiring glory, is your C ration. Specifically, you've got the B-unit version, which means canned beans, a pair of soul-crushing crackers, and maybe, just maybe, a small square of what is technically labeled chocolate. It resembles chocolate in color and name only. In taste, it aligns more closely with wax and melancholy. You chew slowly, your jaw moving rhythmically, more out of obligation than enjoyment. The wind whistles through the trees around you, and somewhere in the underbrush, a raccoon-sized rat observes your meal with what seems like a mixture of confusion and pity. In its tiny rodent brain, it's probably wondering why this strange creature is eating its food. Now you might be thinking, surely, it couldn't have been that bad. But it was. And here's why. The average soldier in World War II burned somewhere between 4,000 and 5,000 calories a day. That's no exaggeration. Marching, digging trenches, standing guard in sub-zero temperatures, running under fire, dragging supplies, carrying wounded comrades, and just staying alive in general took an incredible toll on the body. Yet most days, They were lucky to receive rations that added up to 3,000 calories, often less. Malnutrition wasn't just a distant threat or an occasional inconvenience. It was a constant presence. Like an unwanted companion, always hovering nearby, historians continue to debate whether American rations were superior or inferior to those issued by the Germans. Some argue the United States excelled in sheer volume and distribution. The Germans, at least early in the war, may have offered more flavorful and varied meals. Until, of course, they began to run out of everything. But the truth is, for the soldiers on the ground, few cared about who had the better logistics. All they wanted was one decent meal that didn't taste like it had been aged inside a shoe. And yet, even in the face of this culinary tragedy, there was something oddly intimate about these rations. You might not remember the exact coordinates of a battlefield or the name of every ridge you climbed, but you'd remember the night you sat in the dark, sharing a tin of cold beans with your best friend, while tracer rounds lit up the horizon like a twisted version of a fireworks show. You'd remember passing around a hardened lump of bread that someone had smuggled from a supply truck days earlier, treating it like a treasure more precious than gold. The military insisted that SEER rations were only a stopgap. They were intended for use during short stretches, maybe a couple of days at most, until hot meals could be provided. Spoiler alert, hot meals rarely came on time. More often than not, the SEER rations lingered far beyond their welcome, like a distant cousin who shows up uninvited and somehow ends up moving into your spare bedroom. Among the countless complaints soldiers voiced about these meals, the lack of variety reigned supreme. Try to imagine this. Beans for breakfast. Beans with a stale cracker for lunch. Beans again for dinner, now served with a slightly different cracker and a meat-like cylinder with a label that read pork product, but no one dared read the ingredients. Repeat this cycle for weeks on end, and suddenly the mere sight of a legume can trigger a mild panic attack. Then came the D-rations. These were chocolate bars in theory, but their purpose was not to bring joy. Quite the opposite, actually. They were formulated to be so unpalatable that soldiers wouldn't be tempted to eat them unless they were genuinely desperate. The flavor was bitter, the texture resembled that of compressed gravel, and each bite required the same energy output as sawing wood. But they were dense in calories and technically edible, which was enough to keep them in the kit. Oddly, every ration pack also came with a few cigarettes. Right there beside the cheese spread or powdered drink mix would be a tiny packet of smokes. You'd choke down your cold beans, strike a match, and inhale. For a fleeting moment, the cigarette made you feel a little more human. Or maybe a little lightheaded. The line was thin, especially if it had been days since your lungs tasted anything resembling clean air. And, of course, we have to talk about Spam. Spam was more than a food. It was an experience. It was salty, jiggly, and somewhat translucent around the edges. It was shipped in staggering quantities, millions upon millions of tins. Soldiers fried it when they could, mashed it into potatoes to disguise its origin, or traded it with curious civilians who had never seen a meat that bounced. For some, it was a tolerable source of protein. For most, it was a deeply suspicious substance that defied classification. There were plenty of bizarre tales surrounding rations. Some soldiers joked that the crackers could double as armor plating. One guy wrote home requesting a gallon of ketchup, not because he liked it, but because it was the only way he could stomach his daily meals. There's even a story of a group who tried to bake a birthday cake using crushed crackers, cocoa powder, and melted D-bars. The result sent half of them to the medic with food poisoning. So much for celebrating, but meals were never just about calories. They were moments of stillness. Tiny pockets of peace inside a roaring storm. You'd sit on a log, back hunched against the wind, your spoon scraping the bottom of a tin. And for 5 whole minutes, nobody was shooting at you. In that brief silence, the cold beans almost felt like a blessing. Still, thoughts of real food haunted your dreams. You'd picture your mom's meatloaf. A thick slice of bread. Real butter. Scrambled eggs. Especially the eggs. Real eggs became an almost mythical longing. Some guys swore they could smell them in the air, convinced that somewhere nearby was a live chicken. There wasn't. It was just their imagination, playing cruel tricks born of longing. There was no refrigeration. No microwaves. No spice rack. Your only seasoning came from a salt packet or the black pepper that burst open in your pocket 2 days ago. You picked up little tricks. Warming a can by the fire, but not too close or it might explode. Shaking the cracker box first to knock out any bugs. Saving your coffee until the end, not because it was good, but because it was warm, and warmth was something to hold on to, and yet, the soldiers endured. Morale didn't completely break. They joked. They complained. They laughed about it all. Ration nicknames were traded like baseball cards. There were unofficial contests to see who got the worst meal. There was a strange sense of unity in the suffering. After all, isn't that part of the magic of eating with others? Even a terrible meal can become something unforgettable if you're sharing it, and as you polish off the last cold bite, licking the inside of the tin, brushing cracker crumbs from your lap, and letting your cigarette ember glow faintly in the night, you sit back. You stare up at the stars overhead. And somewhere in that silence, in the damp chill of the forest, you come to a quiet realization. As miserable as this meal was, it's a memory now. And it's one that will stay with you forever. You wake up before the sun even thinks about rising, still curled into the cramped confines of a foxhole that is barely wider than the span of your shoulders. It's not really a hole so much as a dent in the earth, carved by cold hands and desperation. The walls press close on either side, a cold embrace of dirt and roots. Your back groans in protest, still stiff from the previous night's sleep, which felt more like slow-motion drowning in a bath of sticky, clinging mud. There is no blanket, no mattress, no pillow. Just wet soil, a damp uniform, and the ever-present feeling that your spine has been replaced with a rusty chain. Your stomach rumbles quietly. Not in a dramatic or poetic way, but in that low, nagging way that makes you subtly irritable. It isn't the hunger you read about in novels. There's no trembling hand, no vivid hallucination of roasted chicken. It's more like a steady internal complaint. Background noise. A faint protest that starts when you wake and lingers long after you've eaten, because the truth is, nothing you eat out here is ever really enough. You fumble in the half-light for your next ration, groping through your gear with cold, unsteady fingers. You already know what you'll find, but there's always a small, illogical hope that maybe, just maybe, something different might have worked its way into your pack by accident. It hasn't. It's the same cardboard box as yesterday. Same font. Same faded label. Same bitter promise of disappointment. Today it's a Unit D, the dreaded dry rations. You already know the contents by heart, and as expected, you find the usual suspects. Crackers that feel like roof shingles. A little paper-wrapped packet of powdered coffee, fine as beach sand and nearly as tasty. A sugar cube, grayish and oddly chipped, like it was pried off a chunk of sidewalk by a bored engineer. And finally, the chocolate bar. It breaks in your hand with a snap, dry and brittle, a far cry from anything resembling comfort food. You shift slightly, careful not to bump your elbow against the cold mud wall, and rest the box on your knees. You sit there in the early silence, surrounded by the quiet hum of nothing. No gunfire yet. No shouting. Just the faint buzzing in your ears, a mix of tinnitus and exhaustion that hisses softly, as if your body itself is protesting this existence. You take a cracker and break off a piece, dipping it quickly into your canteen water. You hope it softens a little without disintegrating entirely. When you bite down, it crumbles with the texture of ceiling tile. You chew anyway. Historians still debate the effectiveness of these dry rations. Some claim their portability and long shelf life made them invaluable in the field. Light to carry. Easy to distribute. Impossible to spill. Others argue that the lack of flavor and heat eroded morale one bite at a time. Over weeks and months, it wasn't just the body that wore down, but the spirit. A warm meal can feel like a hug. A cold, tasteless one feels like a reminder that nobody has hugged you in a long time. You reach for the chocolate bar. You break off a square and place it on your tongue. Instantly, you regret it. It absorbs moisture faster than a sponge, but offers nothing in return. Your mouth goes dry. Your throat itches. One of your squad mates once tried to melt it over a match, thinking it might improve with heat. He only managed to ignite his glove. Then declared the entire experience a war crime. You chew slowly. Quietly, then, in that silence, you remember something important. This isn't just about food. This isn't lunch or dinner. This is survival. Survival while under pressure, under fire, under the grinding weight of damp clothing, blistered feet, and the constant low hum of fear in your veins. The food isn't just tasteless, it's part of the scenery. Background noise in the endless theater of anxiety. But it's still something. It gives your hands a task. It gives your teeth something to do. It gives your brain a momentary pause from everything else. Over the rim of your foxhole, a crow sails lazily through the air. It glides overhead without a care in the world. You hate that crow. You hate its freedom, its arrogance. You imagine it's been feasting on discarded crusts and worms fattened by battlefield runoff. It's probably better fed than you. Suddenly, a sound, a crinkle of foil beside you. You turn, and there's Corporal Jenkins. He's grinning like he just found gold in his sock. In his hand, he holds something shiny, something rare. A tropical bar. The name alone conjures mixed feelings. You both know what it is. Some clever soul back at HQ decided the heat made normal chocolate impractical. So they invented a heat-resistant bar, one that could withstand the sweltering conditions without turning into goo. It was, in theory, a good idea. But in removing the melt, they also managed to remove anything resembling flavor or joy. Jenkins holds it out with mock ceremony. You take a nibble. The texture is dense and waxy. It does not melt. It does not crumble. It barely even registers as food. The taste is faintly reminiscent of suntan lotion and sand. You chew and nod. It's edible, technically. But only in the same way beige carpeting is technically a design decision. Functional, forgettable, and faintly depressing, still, Jenkins is thrilled. In this world, anything different feels like a celebration. The bar might taste like hardened candle wax, but at least it's not the same old cracker. The sun begins to rise behind the trees, casting long shadows that shrink slowly into the soil. The light filters down through the branches, pale and cold. You hear another rustle as Jenkins pulls out his coffee substitute, which looks like a small envelope of crushed gravel. He tears it open, dumps the contents into his canteen cup, and pours in some water. You do the same. You stir with the handle of a spoon, not expecting much. The smell is faintly reminiscent of real coffee. Not pleasant, but tolerable. The taste, however, is another story. It burns a little going down, sharp and metallic, but at least it's warm. And in this place, warmth matters more than flavor. You sip slowly, letting the steam rise. It fogs your glasses and momentarily blurs your view of the trees. Across the line, someone lets out an impressively loud fart. There's a pause, then a wave of muffled laughter. You all sip your lukewarm coffee in silence, crunching on crackers and gnawing through chunks of dried fruit that have the density of a lead pipe. Nobody says much. You just exist together. Quietly, One of the guys reaches into his pack and pulls out what he calls ration fruitcake. No one knows where he got it. The thing looks ancient, like it's been passed down from trench to trench since World War I. It's dense, square, and has the faint scent of oil and raisins. He slices it with a bayonet, distributing slivers like communion wafers. You eat yours slowly. It's not good. But someone claims it reminds him of holidays back home. Someone else mutters that it reminds him of his ex-mother-in-law's cooking. Either way, it brings a strange kind of comfort. There are always stories. Tales of crackers used to patch worn-out boots. Chocolate bars used in bartering, almost like a second currency. Empty ration tins repurposed as stew pots when someone managed to snag a few fresh ingredients from a passing convoy or sympathetic farmer. One soldier swore he made lasagna using layers of soaked crackers and rehydrated beef. Nobody believed him. But nobody challenged him either. Hope is a powerful seasoning. Then there are the resourceful ones. The foragers. The traders. The ones who somehow always found a way to make things better. Jenkins once traded his watch for a few spoonfuls of peanut butter. He ate it right there in front of the rest of you, using nothing but his fingers and a look in his eyes that said he just remembered what happiness felt like. He said it was worth every second that ticked away. You scraped the last fragments of chocolate from your wrapper and popped the sugar cube into your mouth. It dissolves slowly, offering a flicker of sweetness that doesn't quite make up for anything, but still feels like a win. This isn't a real meal. Not in any traditional sense. But it's a moment. A small act of rebellion against chaos. You didn't choose the menu, but you still get to choose how you experience it. You wrap up the trash carefully, folding it tight. Discipline doesn't stop, even when the food is bad. You stuff the packaging back into your pocket. No one wants to leave evidence. Not for the enemy. Not for the weather. And definitely not for the rats. Especially not the rats. Some GIs hated the rations so much, they created parody labels for them. They printed tiny stickers that read barbecued gorilla toes or sautéed cactus in oil and stuck them on their tins like gourmet branding. There was even one guy who started calling his fruitcake Chateau Ration. Vintage 43. It was war humor at its finest. When you can't make things better, you make them funny. And then you remember the French farmer from last week. He had seen your ration box and laughed so hard he had to sit down. After 5 minutes of wheezing amusement, he handed you a hunk of hard cheese and a dusty bottle filled with something homemade. It smelled like paint thinner and tasted like freedom. You gave him your entire lunch in return. No hesitation. No regret, that cheese was heaven. Real food, even just a bite, reminded you that another world existed. You sipped the last of your coffee. It's gone cold, but you finish it anyway. The wind starts again, low and soft, rustling through the leaves like a whisper. Soon, it will be time to move. But not yet. For now, you sit still, surrounded by wrappers, steam, and silence. And in this quiet, one truth remains. Food doesn't need to be good. It just needs to get you through the next day. You're back on the move. Again. Your boots squelch through the saturated earth, each step sucking downward as if the ground itself wants to keep you there. It's not just mud. It's a thick, tenacious sludge that clings to your soles, wraps around your ankles, and makes every motion feel like a full-body chore. If cement pudding existed, this would be it. The kind of muck that makes you work twice as hard just to move half as far. Overhead, the sun makes a sluggish effort to pierce through the heavy ceiling of low-hanging clouds. The sky is a flat sheet of gray, bruised and sullen, casting the world in a dull metallic light. Your breath rises faintly in the cold air, and your pack feels heavier than usual. Digging into your shoulders like the grip of someone in a bad mood. The straps cut across your collarbones and press into your back with a familiar ache. Not sharp, not unbearable, but ever-present. Like an impatient ghost tapping its fingers, but that isn't what's bothering you the most right now. It's not the chill creeping up your sleeves. It's not the pain that hums in your legs like a tired engine. It's not even the silence that hangs in the air between distant, echoing artillery blasts. No. What has taken hold of your mind, gnawing at the edges of your will, is a growing, creeping dread. You know what's in your next ration tin, it's meat. Again, but not just any meat. No. Today's particular brand of culinary despair is Spam. Ah, Spam. The pale pink mystery loaf. The gelatinous, glistening, ever so salty rectangle that powered the Allied war effort and left their taste buds bewildered in the process. Officially, it is pork shoulder and ham, compressed and canned for convenience. Technically, it fits the definition of meat. Realistically, it exists somewhere in the uncanny valley between food and practical joke. When you peel back the lid with your pocket knife, the contents exit the can with a wet, reluctant slurp. The sound alone is enough to make you pause. The block of meat wobbles as it lands, shimmering faintly under the weak sunlight. It glistens with a film of translucent jelly that no one quite understands but everyone learns to accept. There's a shine to it, unnatural and deeply suspicious. You prod it with the tip of your knife. It jiggles like a guilty secret. Somewhere, in a boardroom far from here, a general probably nodded solemnly over a presentation. Spam, they decided, was perfect. Long shelf life. Portable. Packed with protein. Easy to ship. It ticked every box on the supply chain checklist. Except flavor. And texture. And morale. And human dignity, but credit where it's due, Spam saved lives. It filled empty stomachs. It made its way across every front, from the beaches of Normandy to the jungles of the Pacific, through frozen forests and dusty deserts. It was loaded into C-rations, K-rations, emergency kits, and relief shipments. Soldiers ate it grilled when they had fire. Fried when they had pans. Diced into mystery stews. Mashed into rice. Mixed with whatever was on hand. You, however, are eating it cold. Because there is no fire. No pan. And absolutely no time. One grizzled sergeant once called it salty hope. Another dubbed it war pudding. A third veteran, after staring at his tin in silence for a full minute, simply whispered, "Never again," and refused to elaborate. Even historians today still argue about Spam's legacy. Was it a marvel of industrial ingenuity or a slow-moving food-related trauma? Was it a symbol of logistical triumph or culinary defeat? Some say it was a wartime hero. Others suspect it pushed an entire generation toward vegetarianism. The answer, like most wartime truths, probably lives somewhere in the blurry middle, right next to your dwindling patience. And yet, somehow, soldiers learned to tolerate it. Some even claimed to enjoy it, or at least convinced themselves they did. If you had a packet of mustard, one of those rare golden treasures, you would squeeze it over the slab, covering the blandness in sharp, vinegary distraction. If you had a few minutes near a fire, you'd sear the edges, let it sizzle and crackle until it resembled bacon in shape, if not in spirit. If you had crackers, you'd break them in half, stack the Spam between, and call it a sandwich. A sad one, yes, but still. It gave the illusion of a meal. There was a soldier who once traded a full deck of cigarettes just to get his hands on a tin of Spam. He said it was for his younger brother, who loved the stuff and had never tried the real wartime version. He planned to send it back home as a gag. But that afternoon, the craving got to him. He broke the seal, inhaled the salty aroma, and ate the entire thing in one sitting. The joke never made it to the mail. But he claimed it was worth it. Now you sit beneath the low, sheltering branches of a pine tree. Your knees are drawn up. Your canteen sits beside you. The tin of Spam rests on your thigh as you carve it into chunks with the tip of your bayonet. Each bite is chewy, soft, a little gritty. There's a faint sweetness you can't quite place, like someone once whispered the word honey in the direction of the factory. It coats your tongue and clings to your teeth like melted glue. You swallow, sip water to wash it down, and go back for another bite. It's not the worst thing you've eaten. That dubious honor still belongs to the powdered scrambled eggs from last week's breakfast. But Spam will never win any awards for elegance. Here's the strange part, Spam wasn't just an American thing. It became a global phenomenon during the war. It was sent to British troops, to Soviet allies, to far-flung islands where it was introduced to local communities and somehow stuck around. Dishes like Spam musubi, Spam fried rice, and Spam noodles owe their existence to this unassuming pink brick. It traveled with the troops and stayed behind long after the war ended. Of course, other armies had their own versions. The British had bully beef, a kind of corned beef packed into trapezoid-shaped cans that required a special key to open. The meat itself resembled shredded asphalt soaked in brine. It could be fried, if you had oil. It could be salted, if you were lucky. It could be mistaken for roofing material. If you weren't paying attention, you take another bite and lean back against a tree trunk. It's not bad, you admit silently. Just not good. This is the kind of food that doesn't nourish so much as it fills space. It settles into your belly like a sleeping dog. Heavy, inert, strangely loyal. You almost appreciate it. Then Jenkins appears, his grin barely concealed. He reaches into the depths of his jacket and produces not one, but 2 ketchup packets. He holds them up with the flair of a magician revealing doves. "Snagged these from the field kitchen," he says, and you believe him. He has that look. You open one carefully, squeezing a small red dot onto your chunk of Spam. The difference is immediate. It's still Spam, of course, but now it has a sharpness. A tang. A contrast that makes the saltiness more bearable. Jenkins does the same, and you both chew in exaggerated silence before laughing quietly. Someone nearby moans in mock jealousy. For one shining moment, this is the closest thing to fine dining you've experienced in days. There are stories, always stories, of informal recipe circles forming in the trenches. Not officially, of course. But you'd overhear men comparing ideas. The best way to crisp up Spam using only a lighter and a helmet. The most effective method of flavoring it with crushed bouillon cubes. One guy claimed he made Spam tacos using experimental ration tortillas. No one believed him. But everyone tried it anyway, and then there was Spam surprise. The surprise was usually just Spam again. Occasionally, someone got clever and managed to hide something inside. One time it was a boiled egg. Nobody asked questions. You finish your meal with a square of chalky chocolate, waxy and tasteless. You follow it with a sip of canteen water, now warmed slightly by hours of body heat. It tastes faintly of metal, faintly of earth. It is not refreshing. But it does the job, another meal complete. Another tin emptied. Another spoonful of strange protein from a factory whose name you've forgotten. It all starts to blur together eventually. And yet, deep down, you already know that someday, when this is over, you'll tell stories about Spam like it was legend. You'll sit around a kitchen table, shake your head, and say, "We used to eat that stuff in the mud." And it will sound like folklore. There's a quirky bit of trivia about all this. The Hormel Company, the makers of Spam, received thousands of letters from servicemen during the war. Some were full of praise. Some were pure complaint. Others veered into the poetic. One soldier even wrote a love song, titled Ode to Spam. It was absurd. But you get it now. When you eat the same thing over and over, it becomes a part of your story. even the weird, gelatinous parts. And there's something comforting in that thought. Somewhere across the world, other soldiers are doing exactly what you are doing right now. Sitting under trees. Resting beside tanks. Huddled in buildings with broken roofs. All of them unwrapping the same strange block of meat. All of them chewing. All of them surviving. You wrap up the empty can, wipe your fingers on a rag, and toss the remains into your trash pouch. Your stomach is no longer growling. Your hands are greasy. Your mood. Somewhere between mildly annoyed and quietly satisfied, tomorrow will come with more walking, more mud, more moments like this. But for now, your boots are still. Your friend is close by. And spam, for all its mysteries, has done what it came to do, it fed you. That's enough. Your boots hit the frozen ground with a dull, rhythmic thud, each step softened by the crunch of frost-covered soil. The road beneath your feet is unnamed, likely unmarked on any map, a forgotten path winding somewhere through the Belgian countryside. The chill creeps up through your soles and into your legs, settling into your joints like it has no intention of leaving. The air is so sharp it feels like it's slicing the skin on your cheeks, but not sharp enough to kill the smell coming from Jenkins' socks. That sour, musty odor lingers like a ghost in the wind, even though you both have been walking in silence for hours. You think about making a joke, something biting and clever, but your lips are stiff from the cold and refuse to cooperate. And then it hits you. Out of nowhere, carried on a breeze that defies the laws of war and weather, comes a smell that does not belong here. It is earthy, fragrant, instantly recognizable. Tea. Real tea. Strong, dark, unmistakably British. The scent cuts through the haze of wet wool and wood smoke like a lifeline. You blink, wondering if it's a trick of your mind. But no. Just ahead, a small group of British Tommies has clustered together on the side of the road. They've set up a modest little camp, cobbled together with tarps, canvas, and grit. One of them, bundled in a greatcoat that looks like it has served in 2 wars already, lifts a battered, blackened kettle off a low fire. He pours steaming liquid into enamel mugs. His movements slow but practiced. You and Jenkins slow your pace without saying a word. They see you. One of them offers a brief nod, the kind that means more than words out here. Then, with a small wave, one of the Brits gestures you over. This, right now, feels like a miracle. A battlefield cafe. An unplanned but sacred intersection of cultures and cravings. A makeshift haven in the cold. You're offered a sip from one of the mugs. You accept it with both hands, grateful in a way you don't even know how to describe. The tea is stronger than anything you've ever tasted, almost bitter with boldness. It's so rich you imagine it could support a spoon standing upright. And it is sweet. Thickly, unapologetically sweet. The first swallow rushes through your chest like fire, like home, like memory itself. You don't even like tea under normal circumstances. But now, in this place, in this moment, you drink it like it's the last good thing on earth. Next to the kettle, balanced on a flat rock, is a dented tin filled with powdered milk and a handful of something that might be shortbread. The biscuits look like they've traveled just as far as the soldiers. They are crumbling at the edges, dusty with age, but when you take a bite, they melt on your tongue like something out of a dream. Jenkins, always quick to seize opportunity, reaches into his coat and offers the group a pack of American cigarettes. The trade is quick and friendly. A grin. A nod. Smoke for sugar. You'd call it diplomacy if it weren't so casual. Historians continue to debate whether the British devotion to tea had a measurable effect on morale. Some argue it was a comforting crutch. Others insist it was essential strategic fuel. Winston Churchill himself once ordered that tea rations be safeguarded with the same urgency as ammunition supplies. On paper, that sounds like wartime eccentricity. But when your fingers are frozen and your nerves are frayed, it starts to make perfect sense. Off to the side, leaning against a tree with the casual posture of someone who has seen too much, stands a French soldier. His uniform is layered and worn, and he holds a dark bottle in one hand. He drinks slowly from it, savoring the contents with the kind of reverence usually reserved for church wine. It is not water. You know it. He knows it. Everyone knows it. French troops often received small wine rations, thin vin rouge distributed in dented flasks or battered metal cups. The wine was sour, metallic, sometimes cloudy. Likely older than some of the privates sipping it. But it brought something that was hard to define. Warmth, perhaps. Dignity. A reminder that somewhere in France, grapevine still grew and life still had flavor. You ask him what's in the bottle. He shrugs with a half smile and says, Rouge du Miracle. Miracle Red. And you believe him, because it feels like one, nearby, a corporal from a Canadian unit is slicing a wedge from a wheel of cheese that he claims he found in a barn. Nobody asks questions. The cheese looks dubious, aged in all the wrong ways, but no one hesitates. Each of you takes a turn tearing off a bite. It's tangy, sharp, with a texture that suggests it might have developed its own opinions over time. Jenkins claims it might be haunted. You chase the bite with another swig of tea, or wine, or a mix of both. You are beyond judgment. This is what meals become out here. Not ceremonies of taste, but rituals of connection. You don't eat for the joy of flavor anymore. You eat because your body needs fuel. Because your hands need something to do. Because the motions bring normalcy. But every now and then, against all odds, the food tastes good. Not restaurant good. Not gourmet. But good in the kind of way that imprints itself on your memory forever. Later, as the shadows stretch and the sky starts to shift from gray to bruised blue, you huddle around a small trench stove someone built from discarded tin and spare wire. It puffs out smoke like a tired dragon. Someone brews another pot of tea. Someone else opens a can of beans and sets it nearby to warm. Jenkins attempts to toast one of the biscuits on the end of a fork, holding it too close to the flame. It blackens immediately and drops into the coals. You all stare at it for a second, solemn. Like watching a comrade fall. Then comes the laughter, low and warm and honest. You remember a phrase you once heard. Char and a wad. It's British slang for tea and bread with jam. Not that anyone here has jam. But one guy from Liverpool swears he had marmalade just last week, pulled from a crate during a supply shuffle. You believe him because you want to. He spins the tale with flair. In the end, you trade him a full chocolate bar for his last tea bag. He hands it over with mock ceremony. You break it in half and give the bigger piece to Jenkins, even though he dropped your last cracker in the mud. You're feeling generous. It must be the tea. Here's something strange you remember reading in a briefing once. The British Army actually fielded mobile tea units. Vans outfitted with giant kettles and metal urns, ready to serve steaming brews to troops even during bombardment. They were called brew trucks. Soldiers would line up in the middle of artillery fire just for a hot cup. To outsiders, it might have looked like madness. But if you've ever been this tired, this cold, and this stretched thin, you understand it instantly. Meanwhile, the Americans clung to their coffee. Instant. Powdered. Bitter. Functional. It was a drink that didn't pretend to be anything more than what it was. A caffeine delivery system. Efficient. No frills. But it lacked that warmth, that ritual, that sense of gathering that tea brought. Coffee got the job done. Tea reached your soul. The French, of course, had their wine. And though outsiders viewed it with a mix of envy and concern, for the French, it was sacred. Soldiers joked that they could survive without boots, but not without Bordeaux. It wasn't entirely a joke. You cradle the last of your tea, watching the steam curl upward in lazy ribbons. The heat softens the skin around your cheeks. You draw the cup close, letting it warm your nose. The realization hits you gently, like an old friend tapping your shoulder. These drinks matter. More than the food sometimes. Not just because of the calories, but because of what they symbolize. A pause. A breath. A ritual. A tether to the world before the war. You would give anything for a latte. Or a soda, or even a mediocre milkshake right now. But this tea, in this moment, is sacred. There are always stories. Like the one about the sergeant who brewed tea using snowmelt he didn't strain properly. The result was a cloudy brew flecked with soot and black powder. He insisted it gave the tea spine. Or the officer who tucked Earl Grey sachets into his helmet liner, convinced they protected him from trench lice. They didn't. But he believed. You chuckle quietly, the sound mixing with the wind. You watch the rising steam. You feel the air on your face turn from icy to merely cool. These are the moments you remember. Not the combat. Not the marches. Not the maps. These. The tea. The wine. The bread. The warmth of something shared, something known, in a place where everything else shifts too fast to hold. Someone reaches into their pack and pulls out a dried sausage, offering you a chunk. It is spicy, chewy, and probably not sanctioned by any medical authority. You chew slowly. Every bite reminds you of places that aren't here. Another soldier unwraps a sugar lump he's been saving, folded in a square of newsprint. He crumbles it into the next round of tea. Sweetness isn't just a taste anymore. It's hope in granular form. You lean back slightly, mug empty, your stomach not quite full but satisfied in its own way. Jenkins starts telling a joke. Something about a cow and a minefield. It doesn't matter. You laugh anyway, hard enough to cough up a biscuit crumb. For a brief moment, you are not cold. You are not exhausted. You are not counting the minutes until the next command. You are here, then the kettle whistles again. You wake up somewhere between dawn and despair, that murky hour when the sky has just begun to pale but still refuses to promise hope. The jungle lies around you like a breathing, sweating animal, pulsing with life and discomfort. Sweat clings to your back, beating and pooling despite the early chill that floats over the canopy. Somehow, the air manages to be cold and wet at the same time, sticky with the kind of humidity that seeps through your clothes and into your bones. You shift beneath your poncho, feeling the damp cling of fabric against your neck, and already you know it is going to be a miserable day. The Pacific is a world away from the trenches and frostbitten roads of Europe. This is not a place of foxholes and frostbite. This is a jungle. Thick, dense, dripping, and loud. The trees are too tall. The vines are too many. The noises, birds, insects, distant rustles, never stop. Here, the enemy comes in many forms. Bullets and booby traps, sure. But also insects the size of bullets, vines that lash like whips, and a general atmosphere of steaming rot. It isn't just war. It's nature trying to evict you, and then there's the food. Welcome to jungle rations. You sit up slowly, feeling your joints creak in protest. Something crawls down your arm. You don't flinch. It's a spider. Not one of the deadly ones, probably. You flick it off with 2 fingers and wipe your hand on your pants without comment. The jungle has taught you not to react unless something is on fire. You reach for your pack and pull out your next meal, a dull, waxy packet stamped in block letters with the words, Field Ration, Jungle, Type K. Just reading it feels like a warning. When the military has to name something using multiple layers of categories, it rarely ends well. You peel open the seal, a motion that releases a smell so immediate and aggressive it makes your eyes water. It's the olfactory equivalent of a punch to the face with a damp boot. You recoil slightly, not because it's bad, though it absolutely is, but because your body wasn't prepared. Inside the packet is a familiar trio: a brick of compressed rice, a small can of pork in an unsettling, jellied gravy, and a pouch of dried tropical fruit that looks like someone tried to dehydrate a raisin and then embalmed it. You poke at the rice with your fork. It crumbles immediately, turning to dust the moment it's disturbed. You pop a piece into your mouth and chew. The texture is like chalk that someone forgot to flavor. It sticks to the roof of your mouth, to your teeth, to your will to live. You chase it with a bite of the pork. It is, technically, meat. Possibly. It tastes like metal, salt, and something that reminds you of a childhood regret you can't quite name. Historians still debate whether jungle rations were an upgrade in portability or an experiment in suffering. They were lighter than their European cousins. Easier to carry. That part was true. But the flavor was nearly non-existent, the texture uninspired, and the ingredients suspicious enough to spark debate decades later. Nutrition was supposedly built in, but the result left soldiers drained, moody, and constantly flirting with what became known in whispered tones as jungle stomach. And now, speaking of it, you feel it. A gurgle. A low, menacing swirl in your gut. A prelude to discomfort. That familiar feeling that something in your digestive tract has read the situation and is preparing a revolt. You glance at the latrine, which is, in this case, a shallow hole and a jungle leaf that you hope with genuine sincerity is not poisonous. You mutter a short prayer to no one in particular. This, more than the enemy, more than the heat, more than the sleepless nights, is the daily war you fight. You take a sip from your canteen. The water is tepid and carries the unmistakable aftertaste of purification tablets. Bitter, metallic, and oddly thick on the tongue. You drink anyway, because you have to. You've learned to suppress the fear that something worse than bitterness is hiding inside. That some unseen parasite is chuckling softly somewhere in your digestive system, waiting to hatch. Your thoughts wander to a man in your unit, Corporal Sanderson. He had a policy: if it hadn't been boiled, he wouldn't eat it. He poured hot water over everything. Crackers. Powdered eggs. Even chocolate. Once, he melted a chocolate bar into a sludge and drank it from his mess cup. Called it dessert tea. Swore by it. Said it made him feel safe. You remember the look in his eyes as he sipped, defiance wrapped in ritual. You keep chewing your way through the rations, not because you want to, but because you must. Food is energy. Energy is life. The rice, despite its flavorless crumble, fills your stomach. The pork adds weight, if not joy. You finish the last bite and sigh, then you hear something rustling. Leaves crunch. A familiar face appears from the underbrush. It's Jenkins. Again. He looks like someone who just made a deal with the devil and came out ahead. He grins, reaches into the breast pocket of his sweat-stained shirt, and pulls out a small, crinkled wrapper. A lemon candy. One of those individually wrapped, jewel-bright sour candies tucked into D-ration accessory packs. You stare at it like it's a bar of gold. Jenkins unwraps one and pops it into his mouth. His eyes roll back slightly, and he groans in pleasure, exaggerated but sincere. He holds the other out to you. You take it without a word, with a reverence that usually accompanies holy rituals. You unwrap it carefully, almost trembling. The candy hits your tongue with a burst of tart sweetness so sharp it makes your eyes water again, but for a different reason this time. It is sweet. It is sour. It is real. It is not rice. For 20 precious seconds, you forget exactly where you are. A strange footnote comes to mind. Some versions of the jungle ration came with lemon juice powder. Soldiers quickly discovered it had more uses than originally intended. It could be mixed with water for a sour drink, smeared on boots to give them a shine, or dabbed behind the ears in a last-ditch attempt to repel insects. It failed at all of these. But experimenting gave you something to do. And in the jungle, having something to do besides sweating was its own reward. You fold the fruit pouch closed and tuck it away. A lesson learned early and often: always save something. There is no guarantee about the next crate of supplies. It might come tomorrow. It might come next week. It might be dropped by mistake into the wrong grid and end up feeding a family of wild pigs. Once, you survived an entire day on a tin of grape jam and half a stick of cinnamon gum. It was not ideal. But it worked. You think back to stories you heard about the Australians and their field rations. Their kits were filled with hardtack, canned beef, and a concoction labeled MV that stood for meat and vegetables. Word was, the stuff was so bad that troops joked about launching it at the enemy to break their spirits. Even Japanese soldiers, who got by mostly on rice and pickled roots, might have considered it a bridge too far. Still, adaptation becomes a skill. A necessary one. You learn to mix components. Crumble the crackers into the rice to soften the dryness. Pour powdered coffee into the fruit mix to create a bizarre, tangy dessert. Spread peanut butter onto dried apple slices and pretend, with all your might, that it's pie. Pretend is an essential skill out here. A slow drizzle begins. A fine mist at first, then a steadier fall. Your tin of pork gravy starts to water down. Oddly enough, this dilutes the salt content and improves the flavor. You and Jenkins sit beneath a camouflaged tarp, pulled taut between two trees. The rain makes dull drumming sounds above your heads. You try to stay dry. You fail. But at least the tarp gives the illusion of shelter. You invent a game. You and Jenkins take turns rating each bite. Not by how good it tastes, but by how close it comes to being edible. The rice gets a 4. The fruit gets a 5. The pork earns a 2, but Jenkins insists on awarding it an extra point for comedic value. A rat scampers over your boot, pausing just long enough to size you up. You don't flinch. You barely acknowledge it. Rats are just part of the landscape now. Some of them eat better than you do. Jenkins once swore he saw a rat dragging a full ration box into the bush. Others claim to have trained rats with scraps, exchanging food for companionship. War does strange things to your expectations. And then, the highlight arrives. Coffee. It's instant. It's bitter. It's gritty. It tastes like someone roasted cardboard and dissolved it in pond water. You stir it into a mess cup of warm canteen water and take a slow sip. It is, without question, awful. But it wakes something up inside you. A small flicker of focus. You look over at Jenkins. He raises his tin cup in mock celebration. To flavor, he declares with a smirk. To survival, you respond, clinking your cup gently against his. Soon, you'll be moving again. Another patrol through vines and roots and endless mosquito clouds. Another march across mud and fern and shadow. But for this moment, you sit still. Your stomach, though uncertain, is no longer empty. Your head, though tired, is clear enough. You glance at the empty ration packet beside your foot. It is colorless. Lifeless. Utterly unappealing. And yet, somehow, it has become one of the few reliable constants in your life. For all its failings, it shows up. It does what it's supposed to do. It feeds you, and you already know, deep in your bones, that if you ever make it home, if you ever sit down at a real table again, with real food and real warmth, you will never look at a bowl of rice the same way again. You have never known thirst like this. Not the casual, passing kind where you think, I could go for a soda, or maybe a glass of cold water would be nice. No. This is a deeper, more urgent thirst. This is the kind of thirst that claws at your throat, makes your tongue feel like it's been rolled in sandpaper, and leaves your lips cracked and raw as if they've been scraped with gravel. Your entire mouth feels like a forgotten corner of the desert itself, brittle and breathless. This is thirst that settles into your bones. Welcome to North Africa. The sun here does not rise so much as it launches into the sky. Within minutes, it has claimed full authority over everything. The heat is immediate, aggressive, and constant. It doesn't build, it just is. Your helmet becomes an oven resting directly on your skull, and the inside of your canteen feels like a tepid, metallic bathtub someone forgot to drain. There is no shadow to speak of. The land around you is open, pale, and unrelenting. You sit on a slope of brittle, crumbling dirt, watching dust gather in the creases of your uniform as you attempt to chew through the first ration of the day. It is not unlike watching a camel eat construction materials. Today's menu includes crackers that have the structural integrity of antique roofing tiles. One snaps in half just from you looking at it too hard. There is a tin of processed cheese, which has not fared well in the heat. It sits partially liquefied in the bottom of its container, like someone melted a crayon and called it dairy. Then there is the meat paste. This strange, unlabeled substance somehow manages to be both greasy and dry at the same time, which should be physically impossible. You try not to think too hard about it as you spread it thinly on the crackers, hoping to disguise its true nature. You raise your canteen, twist off the cap, and take a long sip. The water is warm and heavy with that unmistakable taste of old metal. It makes your teeth ache slightly. It tastes as if it was filtered through a handful of rusted bolts. You wonder, just for a second, whether rust counts as a dietary supplement. Maybe it's iron. You swish it around, swallow, and already feel your throat going dry again. The air takes more than it gives. Even your sweat vanishes before it has the decency to cool you. It simply disappears, leaving a sticky film and a faint crust of salt in its place. Historians still argue about the efficiency of Allied desert rations. Some praise them as logistical triumphs. Compact, lightweight, durable. Others see them as heatstroke sealed in a box. What began as practical nourishment turned into culinary punishment once the environment had its way. Sealed tins became little ovens. Bread dried into stone. Cheese melted into slop. And the sand, always the sand, added its own seasoning to every bite. You brush off your cracker before biting in, but there's no point. The ever-present Sahara dust has already coated it. A layer so fine and invasive it might as well have been part of the recipe. You crunch down and feel the telltale grit in your teeth. Next to you, Jenkins sits cross-legged in the full sun, somehow treating the entire meal like it's a casual picnic. He glances at your expression and mutters with a smirk, "Extra minerals." You both laugh. A dry, tired laugh. Mouths full of grainy paste. It's not funny, not really. But out here, humor survives by lowering its standards. Then comes the canned corned beef. Bully beef, as it is often called. A staple of rations across armies. You open the tin, and it slides out in a slow-motion slump. The shape is indistinct. A pink mound that trembles slightly before settling into a moist heap. The smell is not exactly offensive, but it is deeply familiar in a way that triggers no comfort. You jab it with your knife. It gives a little resistance, then yields, like a memory you thought you buried but somehow keeps coming back. You take a bite, chew slowly, and focus on the act of swallowing. Mechanical. Necessary. There is something about eating in the desert that flattens flavor. Everything begins to taste the same. Maybe it's the dry air. Maybe it's the monotony. Maybe it's the knowledge that this meat was likely canned years before you even arrived here. You daydream about vegetables. A tomato. A cucumber. something that snaps and drips when you bite it. But those are distant fantasies. Out here, the only green you see is the look in your eyes when a passing British convoy rolls by with steaming mugs of actual tea. You remember Private Murphy from your unit. Murphy once got it into his head to make a salad. A desert salad, he called it. He crushed up his crackers, stirred in a few raisins, and added water. What resulted was a pale, beige paste that stuck to everything it touched. He called it sand hummus. You tried it, because curiosity is stronger than common sense. It was, unsurprisingly, terrible. But you respected him for trying. There's a peculiar story that still makes its way through the unit. Some guys claim that cheese spread was once used as a substitute for sunscreen. They'd smear it on their noses and cheeks. It didn't help. In fact, it melted off within minutes and left them smelling like spoiled dairy. But in this place, creativity and desperation walk hand in hand. You do what you must, even if it's ridiculous, and then there's the sand. It is in everything. Your boots. Your belt. Your bedroll. Your ears. Your food. You bite into a cracker and hear the tiny, unmistakable crunch of grit that is definitely not supposed to be there. It coats your tongue like seasoning from the earth itself. Mother Nature, in this case, has a flair for spice. You reach into your pouch and pull out your precious ration of lemon powder. It's one of the few things you actually look forward to. You pour it into your canteen cup, mix it with warm water, and stir with the tip of your knife. The result is a cloudy, tangy drink that tastes like synthetic sunshine. It is sharp and sour and artificial, but it also tastes like childhood, like summer, like hope you didn't expect to find here. You drink slowly, savoring each mouthful. Around you, soldiers are scattered across the slope like forgotten figurines. Some shade their food with their helmets, creating small islands of relief. Others eat with their eyes closed, bandanas tied across their brows to block the glare. One guy is crouched over a mirror, trying to toast a piece of bread using reflected sunlight. After a few minutes, he gives up and eats it raw, brushing off the dust with the side of his hand. You recall the rumors about German rations. Word is, their kits included small bottles of beer. You wonder if that's actually true or just propaganda passed around to make everyone miserable. Either way, you would trade your last boot for a drink that didn't taste like rust and regret. Someone begins to sing. It's quiet, off-key, and slow. Something about home. A porch swing. Rain on a tin roof. You hum along without realizing it. Jenkins taps his spoon against his cup in rhythm, the dull beat somehow grounding. It is absurd. It is beautiful. You finish your ration with the final smear of beef paste and reward yourself with a sugar cube from your emergency packet. It dissolves the moment it hits your tongue, coating your mouth with a stickiness that, bizarrely, brings comfort. You feel slightly more human. Not entirely. But enough, almost. As the afternoon drifts into early evening and the wind begins to pick up, sand starts to blow sideways across the open plain. You wrap a scarf around your nose and mouth, tucking it tight beneath your chin. You hunker down behind your pack and brace yourself. Dinner is waiting, though waiting is a generous word. It is whatever remains in your rations. A mystery meat slab that refuses to be identified. Another brittle cracker. A dried fig that looks suspiciously like it's been half-eaten by time. You eat it anyway, then comes the coffee. You open the pouch of powdered granules, pour them into the lid of your canteen cup, and add a small amount of warm water. You stir with your knife. As always. The result is bitter, gritty, and altogether unpleasant. You drink it without hesitation. Every drop, you miss real food. You miss cold drinks. You miss forks that don't double as weapons. But for now, this is what you have. It does not fill you. It does not comfort you. But it prepares you, and here, in the baking silence of the North African desert, being prepared is enough. You are not full. You are not happy. But you are ready, and ready is what will keep you alive. Your day begins, not with a sunrise or a gentle nudge from a friend, but with the hacking, guttural sound of someone coughing up what sounds like half a lung somewhere nearby. It's a wet, wheezing rasp that signals another morning in the field. Alongside it, the faint crackle of waxed paper and cellophane drifts through the chill air, the universal language of wrappers being open. This is how you know it's breakfast time. If that word still holds any real meaning here. If it ever did, you sit up slowly, brush the damp grit off your pants, and reach into your pack with stiff fingers. Out comes a now familiar cardboard box, marked in fading ink, "Ration, breakfast unit." You look at it with tired eyes. The word breakfast feels like a cruel joke. It suggests warmth, aroma, maybe a plate of eggs, toast, something that once sizzled on a stovetop. But this? This is not breakfast in any civilized sense. This is survival pressed into rectangles and wrapped in foil. You peel open the box and lay out the contents in a practiced routine. One chunk of compressed cereal bar, beige and lifeless. One paper pouch of powdered lemon drink mix. Two small, flour-dusted biscuits that break apart if you look at them too hard. And today's crown jewel, a single slab of chocolate, sealed in wax paper and blessedly intact. You unwrap the cereal bar first, taking in its utilitarian form. It is dry. Not just needs milk dry. But arid in a way that sucks moisture from your mouth before it even gets there. It tastes faintly of oats, but mostly of industrial efficiency. It is bland, dense, and carries the uncanny flavor of obligation. You chew, because you must. It offers calories, and that is really all the army ever promised. You pour the lemon drink powder into your canteen cup, then add water from your flask. It turns cloudy, like lemonade seen through a foggy window. You stir it with whatever you have on hand, maybe a spoon if you're lucky, or the back end of a toothbrush, or a clean enough twig snapped from the nearest tree. The result tastes vaguely like lemonade filtered through paper, metal, and the memory of something cheerful. If childhood had been sadder and rationed by logistics officers, it might have tasted like this. Just then, Jenkins arrives. He flops down beside you, already working his way through a packet of peanut butter with the same no-nonsense enthusiasm he applies to everything. He squeezes the packet directly into his mouth, licking the edges without shame. He offers you a taste, a gesture of genuine camaraderie. You break off half a biscuit and trade it for a corner squeeze of that salty, gritty paste. It sticks to the roof of your mouth. It's messy. It's dry. But it's real. This is the Ration hustle. Every mealtime is a barter session, an impromptu economy built on scarcity and preference. A chocolate bar is a form of currency. A can of meat can be leveraged into peanut butter. 2 lemon drink powders might be worth a few bites of cheese spread. If someone has real jam, he instantly becomes a feudal baron. Supplies become social capital. Deals are struck in low voices. Alliances are formed over dessert items. Debts are remembered. Historians continue to debate whether the Ration was a stroke of practical brilliance or a logistical blunder that overstayed its welcome. It was never meant to be permanent. Designed for missions lasting no longer than 72 hours, the compact, lightweight ration became a long-term solution out of necessity. The packaging was neat. The concept sound. But monotony wore on morale. Eating the same thing over and over strips food of pleasure, reduces it to function, and makes every mealtime feel like a rerun. You unwrap the chocolate. It's a little dusty around the edges, but it holds its shape. You take a bite. It's surprisingly good. Sweet, slightly grainy, and soft enough to melt on your tongue. You close your eyes and, just for a second, pretend. Pretend that you're eating it after pancakes and coffee, at a table with a cloth napkin and silverware that isn't foldable. Pretend that you are not sitting in the dirt with your back against a damp tree, boots half-tied and sleep crusted in your eyes. One of the guys gets creative. He crushes his cereal bar into powder, mixes in peanut butter, adds a splash of water, and rolls it into a lumpy ball between his palms. He calls it a breakfast truffle. Everyone laughs, then takes a bite. The texture is questionable, the flavor inconsistent, but it's edible. That alone is a win. Someone says it tastes like ambition. Everyone agrees. You once heard a story about a squad who cobbled together a birthday cake out of ration components. They used graham crackers, peanut butter, a stick of gum for garnish, and a candle fashioned from a twist of wax paper and a single match. When they lit it and sang, the birthday boy cried. Nobody mocked him. If it had been your birthday, you probably would have cried too. There's a quirky bit of trivia you recall. Each ration came with a small packet of toilet paper, 2 sheets. That's it. 2. As if 2 paper-thin squares were going to solve anything. Soldiers hoarded them, bartered them, protected them like treasure. In some units, they were traded at higher value than chocolate. Jenkins once had 12 saved up, folded neatly in a waterproof pouch. No one asked how. No one wanted to know. This morning, the group is unusually quiet. The usual grumbling has faded. Most of the guys are eating in silence, focused inward. Some clean their rifles. Others stretch out sore muscles or stare blankly into the trees. The only sounds are soft ones, spoons scraping the inside of cans, the slosh of water in canteens, the faraway chirp of birds too oblivious to care that there's a war. You take another sip of your lemon drink. Its odd aftertaste lingers, sour and faintly medicinal. You savor it anyway. You think about milk. Not the powdered kind that comes in ration tins. Real milk. Cold and white, straight from a refrigerator that hums softly in a warm kitchen. You remember the sound of the bottle opening. The smell of cereal, the clink of a spoon against porcelain. The creamer tab in your pocket, smuggled from a Red Cross package, feels like a relic from another life. You finish your meal. You crumble the last of the cereal bar into your mouth and fold the cardboard box flat. Military discipline extends to waste. Every soldier is issued a small stack of waxed paper bags to use for trash. Not because the war is tidy, but because leaving wrappers and crumbs behind can get you killed. You pack your debris carefully, roll the bag, and tuck it into your pouch. Then Jenkins leans toward you and whispers a rumor. He's found someone, an actual soldier, nearby, who has a few glass jars of real jam. Strawberry, supposedly. Maybe raspberry. The price? 3 chocolate bars, 1 lemon drink packet, and 2 full cigarettes. You both glance down at your gear, weighing your options. Considering the trade, this isn't just about hunger. It's about morale. About pleasure. About the illusion of choice. Barter at breakfast has its own rules. Who has what? Who needs what? How far someone is willing to go to make their day taste a little less like cardboard. A man with peanut butter is powerful. A man with cheese spread is revered. A man with jam. He becomes legend. You recall something Eisenhower reportedly said during the war. That the American soldier fought on cigarettes, Spam, and rations. He may have been joking. He may have been serious. Either way, he wasn't wrong. Later, you pass the jam guy. He sits like a prophet in a marketplace. Soldiers gather around him, offering rations, trading extras, waiting patiently. Some walk away triumphant, holding slices of toast smeared in crimson joy. Jenkins works his charm, and thanks to your donation of a half-empty matchbox, you both manage a taste. You get 1 lick. That's it. A quick swipe of a cracker across the top of the jar. It's sweet. Sharp. Real. Your eyes water. Whether from the sugar or from something deeper. You don't know. It's strange how one bite of jam can reroute your entire emotional landscape. Soon enough, the day will demand its due. Marching. Guard duty. Trench repair. But for now, the cereal is gone. The lemon drink is finished. And one tiny spoonful of jam has made the morning feel less like a repetition and more like a small, miraculous pause. You slip one of the spare biscuits into your pocket, tucking it beside your lighter. For later. Always for later. Because out here, you never know what later will look like. But you know it will come. And when it does, you want to be ready. The wind carries the bitter scent of engine grease and scorched powder, a mingling of fumes that clings to your nostrils and coats the back of your throat. It's the scent of machinery and spent ammunition, of diesel engines working overtime and rifles that haven't cooled since yesterday. You stand in line behind 12 other figures, each worn down by fatigue, each gripping a dented metal mess kit like it contains something far more sacred than dinner. And in a way, it does. That tray in your hand is a ticket to something rare, something rumored but rarely delivered, hot food. There is a whisper moving down the line, passed from soldier to soldier like contraband. A hint. A possibility. A maybe. Tonight's meal might actually be warm. Not lukewarm, not just slightly above freezing, but truly, undeniably hot. The kind of hot that steams in the night air. The kind of hot that matters. In this place, with its bone-deep exhaustion and constant static of danger, hot food has become more than just nourishment. It is myth. It is morale. It is memory made edible. You've arrived at the domain of the mobile field kitchen. These aren't glamorous places. They are metal carts blackened by smoke and dented from travel, dragged across continents behind tired jeeps and battered trucks. They're overseen by cooks whose faces look as weathered as the gear they operate, men whose uniforms are stained with grease. Whose aprons have seen more action than some infantrymen. They don't speak much. Most haven't smiled in months. But if one of them told you to kneel, you probably would. Because these are the men who control the burners. And hot food, even when it tastes like despair, is still hot. That makes all the difference. The line moves at a crawl. You shift your weight from foot to foot, trying not to think about how many different types of mud are currently caked to your boots. Jenkins stands behind you, rubbing his neck and muttering under his breath. Bet it's eggs again, he says, without much hope. You nod slowly. You both know it will be. But not the eggs you remember from home. Not the scrambled clouds of Saturday mornings, rich with butter and salt. These are the Army's powdered eggs, rehydrated with hot water and optimism, stirred into a yellow mush that holds the approximate consistency of damp insulation. They smell faintly of sulfur and missed opportunities. Finally, you reach the front of the line. The cook glances up briefly, then grunts. Without a word, he scoops a ladle of yellow sludge and drops it into your tray. A wet splatter. Next comes a grayish-brown blob labeled as meat gravy, which he pours over a mound of rehydrated potatoes that sag on contact. To finish, he adds a few limp, orange slices that might have once been carrots, though their origin is unclear. You nod, as if he's handed you a steak dinner. Out here, you don't ask questions. You find an overturned crate and take a seat, balancing your mess kit on your knees. The steam rises in gentle spirals. The first bite of egg is lukewarm, slightly gritty, and carries a tang of something metallic, but it is warm. And that warmth alone is enough to earn it a 5-star rating by battlefield standards. You eat slowly. Carefully. Like someone who remembers what flavor used to mean but is trying not to get emotional about it. Historians still debate whether mobile field kitchens made a meaningful impact on morale. Some claim they were a logistical miracle. Others argue they just added another layer of government-mandated disappointment. But here, in this moment, there is no debate. Hot food equals a good day. Cold food equals sadness. It's simple math that every soldier understands instinctively. You take another bite. Then another. You chase it with a sip of coffee served in the bottom half of your mess tin. The coffee is thin and tepid, tasting like it was brewed by pouring hot water over gravel and letting it steep beside a transmission. But it is warm. And that warmth trickles into your fingers and up your spine like a small blessing. Jenkins sits beside you, hunched over his tray, chewing in silence. His eyes are distant. He looks like a monk deep in thought, contemplating something too sacred to share. He lifts his spoon and says, with quiet solemnity, "One day, I'm gonna open a diner. Serve nothing but this slop." You raise an eyebrow. He nods. Call it victory sludge. For a moment, the two of you burst into laughter. Real, chest-shaking laughter. The kind that makes your ribs hurt and your shoulders loosen. A few officers glance over. You don't care, it's strange, the things you cling to out here. A warm meal. A semi-clean spoon. A story about food you once had, or might still have. One guy in your platoon claims he once got a real piece of toast, with actual butter. Another swears he saw a fresh apple in a Sicilian village. Everyone has a food legend. You collect them like souvenirs. There's a soldier in your unit, Torres, who guards a tiny envelope of chili flakes. His mother sent it to him in a letter, tucked between newspaper clippings and photos of home. He treats it like gold. When he sprinkles it over his eggs, he closes his eyes, takes a breath, and eats like he's in a restaurant. One time, he let you try a pinch. The heat sliced through the blandness like a sunrise through fog. You've heard that some of these cooks, the ones manning the mobile kitchens, were trained chefs in their former lives. One had a 5-star restaurant in Chicago. Another was a pastry chef in Paris. Now they stir powdered potatoes with bent ladles and serve reheated stew from metal drums blackened by fire. They don't complain. Not really. Just sigh sometimes, like the world played a cruel joke and forgot to deliver the punchline. You finish your eggs, mop up the last of the meat gravy with a slice of stale bread, and lean back slightly. You are not full. Not truly. But you are satisfied in the way a man in the cold can be satisfied by warmth. You remember the chocolate bar stashed in your pocket. But you save it for later. Out here, dessert is not about sweetness. It's about planning. Timing. A moment to look forward to. A loud clang rings out. It's not a bell exactly, just a dented wrench tied to a length of string. The cook strikes it with the back of a spoon. Dinner is over. Cleanup begins. Everyone lines up again, this time holding their greasy trays like shameful confessions. There is one communal bucket of rinse water. It is lukewarm, cloudy, and flecked with floating bits of food that have long given up their identity. You dip your mess kit in. Your fingers brush against someone else's spoon. Neither of you says a word. Sanitation is now a flexible concept. Jenkins returns to your crate holding something in his hand. He smiles. A small, crinkled packet. Grape jelly, or something close. He peels it open and offers you half. The two of you eat it slowly, spreading it across the corners of your bread like it's caviar. It tastes like cold rubber and synthetic fruit. It tastes like everything you've ever missed. You smile anyway. Because it is sweet. The sun begins to sink, and the sky turns gold, then violet, then a deep, endless navy. The glow of the field stove fades as the cook closes it up, secures the tools, and prepares to drag it to the next location. You wipe off your tray with a rag, tuck it back into its pouch, and rise with a creak of your knees. You are not light. You are not comfortable. But your stomach is calm. Your spirits, for the moment, are holding. You remember graffiti scrawled in black paint on the side of a field kitchen back in Italy. It said, "Hot slop, cold hope." 4 words, but they told the whole story. Then you hear a voice. A sharp call that breaks through the calm. Someone from another unit has found real eggs. Actual, unpowdered, from the shell eggs. There is a buzz. A stir. Men turn. Someone says a deal was struck with a local farmer. 10 full cartons, exchanged for a generator part and a pair of worn-out boots. No one knows the details, but everyone rushes to see. The cook, to his credit, smiles. For the first time you've seen. He reopens the stove. Fires up the burner. Crack. Sizzle. Real eggs hit the pan. The sound alone is enough to bring silence. The line forms again. It moves fast. You reach the front. You get half an egg. Scrambled. Warm. Tender. It lands on your tray like treasure. You sit down again. Jenkins is next to you, eyes wide. You both eat slowly. Deliberately. There is no talking. No joking. No rush. Just chewing. Just taste, and in that quiet, under the starlit sky, beside the steel belly of trucks and the hum of fading engines, with your boots unlaced and your fingers still stained from old coffee and powdered egg, you feel it. Not joy. Not relief, something smaller. Something softer, you feel something close to peace. The canteen thumps against your thigh with every step, a dull, rhythmic reminder that you are still walking, still moving, still dehydrated in spite of the liquid sloshing inside. You're not entirely sure whether it's half full or half empty, but you suspect that the answer doesn't really matter. What matters is that the water inside tastes like it has already been through 3 separate wars, picked up every flavor of misery along the way, and decided to take up permanent residence on your tongue. You uncap the lid, bring it cautiously to your lips, and take a tentative sip. Immediately, your face contorts. Warm. Metallic. A curious aftertaste that vaguely resembles toothpaste, though you haven't brushed your teeth in at least 48 hours. You blink, pause, and sip again, just to be sure. Same result. Either the lining of the canteen is corroding, or your taste buds are officially rebelling. Welcome to the world of battlefield hydration, where every swallow is a gamble, and every bottle of water is a liquid mystery. They say water is life, but nobody ever tells you that sometimes life comes with bonus ingredients, rust particles, iodine tablets, and the occasional drifting fleck of unknown origin. Every standard-issue GI canteen is designed to hold 1 quart of liquid. In theory, that quart should be clean, cool, and refreshing. In reality, it's more like a lukewarm, suspicious soup of questionable vintage, warmed by your body heat and flavored by the contents of your backpack. You give it a half-hearted shake, as if maybe that will magically freshen it up. It doesn't. It only serves to swirl the questionable contents into more intimate contact with each other. Technically, you're supposed to boil your water before drinking it. That's the official guidance, the stuff they drill into you during training. But boiling water takes time, and time is one of the first casualties out here. In practice, you drink what you can find, when you find it, and hope that it doesn't bite back. You filled your canteen from alpine streams that looked clean but smelled like fish, from brackish wells that bubbled ominously, from rain barrels that tasted like old wood, and once, shamefully, from a shallow puddle that had a frog sitting in it. The frog didn't move. Neither did you. Iodine tablets are supposed to help. And they do, in the same way that gasoline can help start a fire. You drop one into your canteen, watch as it fizzes and releases a cloud of yellowish chemicals that promise safety. 30 minutes. That's the rule. You wait, though you know the taste won't improve. The moment of truth arrives. You sip. It tastes like regret soaked in battery acid. You swallow anyway. Jenkins swears by his personal remedy. He carries packets of powdered lemon drink in his breast pocket and adds a dash every time he purifies water. Kills the iodine, he says, grinning through yellowing teeth. What it actually does is create a beverage that tastes like sour metal and lingers on the back of your tongue long after the last drop is gone. Still, it's better than nothing. You mix your own, shake it with a grimace, and drink. Historians like to argue over whether the Army's hydration protocol saved lives or merely prolonged discomfort. They cite figures, quote field reports, mention casualty rates from dysentery and cholera. But none of them ever tasted the water. They weren't the ones swishing metal-flavored iodine lemonade around in their mouths while praying they didn't throw it back up. You pass a burned-out supply truck resting on deflated tires. Its twisted frame sits silent against the sky. Two soldiers are crouched beside a jerry can, funneling water through an old sock stretched over a tin cup. Inside the sock is a concoction of sand, pebbles, and a few hunks of charcoal. They call it a field filter. They beam with pride, nodding at you as if they've just reinvented science. You nod back, because faith, however misguided, is still faith. One guy in your company tried mixing instant coffee with lemon powder to cover the taste of the iodine. He called it combat cola. He took one sip and immediately vomited behind a bush. Nobody tried it again, and then there's the canteen itself. That clunky, ever-present companion. Some are made of aluminum, others of plastic, depending on supply lines, unit type, and pure dumb luck. The metal ones turn scalding under the sun, searing your fingertips and turning your water into tea brewed in a munitions factory. The plastic ones absorb every odor in your kit, old socks, greasy cheese, a forgotten mint. If you left a single piece of candy in there last week, congratulations. You now have mint-flavored meat water. It's an experience. You open your canteen again, hesitating for just a second before bringing it back to your lips. Another sip. Still warm. Still metallic. Still faintly horrifying. But you swallow because you have to. Out here, thirst is the only constant more reliable than fear. The average soldier loses a quart of water per hour under heat and strain. You're not even sweating much today, and you can already feel your body drawing from reserves it no longer has. You remember Corporal Reed, who once ran out of water during a desert patrol and tried chewing on the edge of his sock for moisture. He didn't get much for his trouble. Just a mouth full of lint and a week-long rash he called athlete's tongue. Still, he tells the story like it was a victory. That's the kind of madness you live with. There were whispers of elite units getting fancy gear, early prototypes of those high-tech purification straws that modern hikers now carry. Long plastic tubes with filters inside, designed to let you drink directly from a stream without fear. They looked ridiculous, like oversized novelty straws, but apparently they worked. If you didn't mind the image of someone kissing a mud puddle, it was a decent setup. You reach into your kit and pull out your emergency drink mix. The label reads fruit beverage powder, orange flavor. You know it better by its true name, Tang's weird cousin. You tear the packet open and dump the orange dust into your canteen. It clumps instantly. You shake it like your life depends on it. Then take a hopeful sip. It's chalky, tangy, and faintly electric, like someone blended orange peel with powdered sidewalk and a jolt of static from a wool sweater. Jenkins says it reminds him of childhood summers. You wonder what kind of childhood he had. If you're honest, you crave cold drinks more than you crave real food. You daydream about ice cubes clinking in tall glasses. About soda fizzing on your tongue. About milk so cold it leaves condensation on your fingers. You imagine refrigerators, humming softly, filled with color and choice. Out here, everything is tepid. Your canteen rides against your leg all day, soaking up your body heat and transforming into a hand warmer you never asked for. One time, in the middle of nowhere, a miracle happened. A supply drop came in. A box of real soda, glass bottles, packed in straw to prevent breakage. They were distributed like holy relics. You got one. It was flat. It was warm. It was glorious. You popped the cap, took a sip, and nearly cried. Jenkins dropped his bottle onto a rock. It shattered instantly. He sat down and wept without shame. You poured half of yours into his canteen, and for the rest of the day, neither of you said a word about it. Now, as night approaches and the sky deepens into indigo, you dig in for the evening. Your canteen is nearly empty. You ration the last few mouthfuls with care. One sip now. One for the middle of the night. One for the morning. It's not enough. It never is. You lean back against your pack and look up through the branches. The stars are coming out, silent witnesses to your thirst. You uncap your canteen and take the final swallow. Warm. Stale. Slightly bitter. Still disgusting. Still necessary. You lie back, arms crossed behind your head, and think about the future. Maybe, someday, you'll have a kitchen with a refrigerator full of cold drinks. Maybe you'll sit in a chair and drink from a real glass. Maybe you'll never taste iodine again, or maybe, just maybe, you'll keep the canteen. A dented relic of the time you learned what thirst really was. Not just for water, but for home. The sky begins its slow, deliberate shift, that familiar and weighty transformation from the solid black of night to the bruised, uncertain purple of pre-dawn. It creeps in gently at first, like ink bleeding across damp paper, until you start to notice shapes again, trees, trucks, the silhouettes of helmets tilted back in rest or worry. You are on watch, crouched low behind a makeshift barricade built from sandbags, broken crates, and whatever else could be piled waist-high in a hurry. Your rifle rests across your knees, and your hands hover near it without thinking. One eye stays fixed on the horizon, where shapes might suddenly move. The other eye keeps drifting toward the instant coffee packet in your pocket. Like a secret waiting to be opened, this is the hour of in-betweens. It is not quite night, but not yet day. It is not quite quiet, but not fully awake. Your body feels it most. Every joint feels stuffed with sand, every muscle half convinced it was meant to be elsewhere. Your bones ache like wet sandbags, heavy and unwilling, barely held together with sinew and habit. You are tired, tired in a way that doesn't go away with a nap. But tired or not, you cannot afford to relax. Morning is danger time. The enemy, if they come, like to come now. Just as the world begins to blink awake. So you blink too, and stay sharp, and naturally, this is the moment when you reach for coffee, your fingers dig into the familiar space in your breast pocket. Fishing for the thin, crinkly envelope labeled soluble coffee, type 1. You've done this so many times it feels like muscle memory, like scratching an itch or checking your rifle bolt. You tear the top open with your teeth, the paper soft from heat and time, and dump the dry, granular powder into your battered canteen cup. There is no ceremony, only rhythm. You pour in a splash of lukewarm water from your canteen, barely warmer than your body, and then stir it with whatever is handy. Today, it's the tip of your bayonet. Not ideal, but spoons are for other people, and there's something satisfying about stirring coffee with a weapon. A little theatrical, maybe. But drama fits here, the smell rises almost immediately. Bitter. Burnt. Slightly chemical, with a note of rusted tin and distant campfire. It is not good coffee. It never has been. But it is familiar, and that counts for more than flavor. You bring the cup to your lips and take a cautious sip. It is gritty, acidic, and somehow sharp, like someone scraped old motor oil through a filter of regret. You grimace as it slides down your throat. But your eyes open just a little wider. And that is the point. Some historians like to debate whether caffeine was one of the real unsung heroes of the Allied war effort. They talk about how it showed up in every ration kit, how supply chains prioritized its distribution, how generals issued studies on its ability to improve alertness and morale. Some officers even joked that coffee kept more soldiers alive than ammunition ever did. Looking around at the half-sleeping figures around you now, at the tin cups in their hands and the steam curling around their faces, it's hard to disagree. Private McIntyre is crouched beside you. His helmet is tilted back and his sleeves are rolled high, revealing pale forearms flecked with grime. He is chewing straight from a packet of coffee grounds, crunching them between his molars like they're sunflower seeds. You try not to stare. He catches your glance and shrugs, cuts out the middleman. He mutters through a mouthful of grit. You nod slowly and reach into your pouch for a sugar cube. It's one of the last, carefully wrapped in wax paper like a treasure. You offer it to him. He takes it without a word, gives a small nod of thanks that feels like a full conversation. Breakfast, if you can call it that, is nothing more than this. Coffee. Maybe a cracker from last night's stash. Maybe a scrap of dried meat, if you still have one tucked away. But really, it's just coffee. Your stomach is too wired to want more. The caffeine is already spreading, lighting up your veins like a whispered warning. You remember your first real cup of field coffee. It was right after your first true firefight. Your hands were shaking so badly you couldn't even lift your cup. Jenkins, always steady, poured it for you. He held it to your lips like it was communion. You don't remember the taste, not exactly. You remember the warmth. The steadiness of his grip. The fact that you could still feel something through all the noise. Some units, the lucky ones, sometimes got tins of sweetened condensed milk. You saw one once, dented and gold-labeled, like it belonged to a different world. Most didn't. But every once in a while, a guy from supply would accidentally leave one behind during a transfer. You'd mix it in, swirl it with your knife, and the result would be so close to actual comfort you'd laugh out loud. You'd forget, just for a moment, where you were. You remember a story someone told in Italy. American soldiers trading their instant coffee packets with local villagers for real espresso. The villagers were horrified by the GI coffee. One old woman reportedly sniffed it, spat on the ground, and declared that it tasted like burnt boots soaked in rainwater. You believed her. The sun begins to lift above the horizon, bleeding gold and orange across the fog. You watch as the light creeps across the ground, touching helmets and boots, turning morning into something that almost feels alive. You take another sip from your cup. It has cooled now. The warmth is mostly gone. The dregs have settled into a bitter sludge at the bottom, thick and unwelcoming. But you drink it anyway. That's the rule. Waste nothing. Not even the bad parts. There is a strange, fragile beauty in this moment. In the silence before the day really begins. In the quiet clink of metal against metal. In the soft voices of men trying to wake themselves up without remembering too much. Coffee isn't just a drink out here. It is the briefest kind of ritual. It is a pause. A breath. A moment when you can pretend, if only for 10 minutes, that you are somewhere warm. Somewhere safe. Somewhere that isn't here. Jenkins drops beside you with a groan. His boots scuff the dirt, and he lifts his tin cup without enthusiasm. This tastes like dirt, he says, his voice thick and low. You nod without turning. Good dirt, though. He chuckles and lifts his cup in a mock toast. Yeah. Rich in minerals. The sun climbs higher. The world wakes up around you. Chatter rises. Officers appear, their voices sharp and clipped. Orders are given. Equipment is checked. Another march awaits. Another patrol. Another chance at a memory or a scar. The day will unfold in all its dusty, chaotic, and exhausting complexity, but this coffee? You'll remember this. You will remember the shape of the steam against the rising light. You will remember the bite of bitterness followed by the flush of alertness. You will remember the hush, the warmth, the heavy cup pressed against your palms. Someday, far away from this war, you might find yourself on a porch with a decent mug of real coffee. You might be older, maybe slower, maybe a little broken in the bones. But when you lift that cup and taste something strong and hot, your mind will wander. Not to the marches. Not to the noise, but to this. To the edge of dawn. To the hiss of powder in warm water. To your fingers, stiff with cold and dust, wrapped around a dented tin cup, and to the terrible, glorious, absolutely unforgettable coffee that somehow held you together. By now, your body has begun to accept the inevitable. You have consumed enough tinned meat, gray and gelatinous, to qualify for some new subspecies of battlefield livestock. You joke that if someone shakes you hard enough in your sleep, you might oink. Jenkins says you've already started snorting like a pig during your naps. You don't argue, so when you and Jenkins are trudging through the tall, overgrown grasses of a forgotten corner of the French countryside and you both catch a faint, unmistakable cluck in the distance, your heads snap around with such synchronized urgency that it feels religious. For a moment, both of you freeze, eyes wide, breath held, hearts momentarily paused. You don't know what divine force you expected to find out here, but a chicken, an actual, living, breathing, uncanned chicken, is somehow more miraculous than anything else your imagination might have offered. There it is. A Real chicken. Its feathers rustle in the breeze, its legs lift and land with that peculiar little bounce, and it moves across the yard with the kind of unbothered confidence usually reserved for royalty or drunks. You are in disbelief. You are also deeply, painfully hungry. The scene around you feels unreal. You're passing a stone farmhouse, its facade aged and weary, sunken slightly into a wild garden that has long since claimed the territory as its own. Vines twist around broken shutters. The front door is hanging off its hinges like a lazy grin. Glass is shattered, the windows hollow-eyed. And yet, the chicken strolls across the yard as though none of that matters. As though war doesn't exist. As though it's just another Tuesday in the countryside. Jenkins narrows his eyes and whispers one word. Dinner. You don't laugh. Neither of you do. Because he's right. Of course, there are rules. Technically, you're not supposed to scavenge from civilian property. Even if the house is abandoned. Even if the war has hollowed it out and left it behind like a broken shell. But technicalities feel laughable after weeks of powdered cheese, flavorless crackers, and vacuum-sealed sorrow. You and Jenkins exchange a look. It's the kind of look that says everything and nothing at once. You nod. He nods. The decision is made without a word, the chase begins. It is brief, ridiculous, and louder than you would have liked. The chicken is fast, unervingly clever, and blessed with an instinct for survival. You crash through weeds and over stones. Jenkins yells. You stumble. At one point, he slips on a patch of moss and crashes directly into an overturned wheelbarrow with a noise that sounds like a full metal symphony. You wince, convinced he's broken something. But moments later, he rises from the wreckage with a wild grin stretched across his face and the squawking chicken held tightly under one arm. He looks triumphant, like a man who has just been awarded a medal for valor in poultry combat. You drag the prize back toward the old house. Tucked near one of the crumbling walls, hidden beneath a tangle of weeds, you uncover an iron pot, half buried and rusting but still usable. Someone once cooked here. That much is clear. In the corner of the garden, you spot a collection of plants that look suspiciously intentional, parsley, maybe, and something that could be thyme. An herb garden, long neglected but still holding on. You are, by all accounts, moments away from opening a rustic bistro. All you need is butter, and that's where things get tricky, because you may have a chicken. You may even have a pot, a few scraggly herbs, and the vague memory of how cooking works. But without butter, this dish is missing its soul, that is when you turn to the black market. Historians have spent years debating whether the Allied black market operations were a necessary evil or an unmanageable mess. Whether they undermined official supply lines or buoyed morale when everything else felt broken. The truth, as always, lives somewhere in the middle. What is certain is this: wherever soldiers went, a quiet economy followed. Items changed hands like secrets. Chocolate, cigarettes, extra socks, canned fruit, and, on rare and golden occasions, butter, you know a man. Private Kowalski. Nobody knows exactly what his job is anymore. He's not dangerous. Just unsettlingly efficient at finding what nobody else can. You approach him with the kind of casual caution usually reserved for strange dogs and field sergeants. You ask about butter, he raises a single eyebrow, says nothing, disappears into a tent that smells like motor oil and ambition. Minutes pass. You start to think he's joking. Then he returns, holding a small tin in one hand like it's the crown jewels. The label is worn. The lid dented. The smell is complicated. Slightly rancid, but underneath that, something glorious. A trace of richness. A whisper of home. You don't ask where he got it. You don't want to know. You offer him 3 cigarettes, 1 lemon drink powder packet, and half of a chocolate bar. He nods, takes the goods, and hands over the tin. The transaction is complete. Fair trade. That night, you and Jenkins work quietly in the fireplace of the ruined house. You keep the flame low and the voices lower. The chicken goes into the pot, cleaned, salted, scattered with the wild herbs, and finally kissed with the precious butter. It hisses as it hits the pan. The smell rises like an answered prayer. People notice. They drift toward the smell like moths to warmth. At first, it's just 1 or 2, pretending to check their gear or warm their hands. Then more. Soon, the entire platoon is circling, orbiting your makeshift kitchen like hungry satellites. One man offers to chop wood in exchange for a spoonful. Another promises to tell 3 new jokes for a taste of the broth. A third offers to stand guard during cleanup. By the time the chicken is ready, you're hosting something that resembles a dinner party. No one has seen a ration in over an hour. No one misses it. You serve the stew in helmet bowls, carefully wiped clean. Everyone sits cross-legged on the dusty floor like children at camp. The meat is tough in places, but tender in others. The skin is scorched and crispy. The broth is thin, salted, aromatic, and steaming. You take your first bite and feel something in you restart. Something that hasn't worked in weeks. Jenkins hums as he eats. He's licking the spoon like it has secrets, and just when you think it can't get better, the universe offers one more surprise. A French villager, a woman maybe in her 60s, appears at the edge of the doorway. She doesn't speak. Just observes. Then, slowly, she steps inside, says nothing, and sets down a small basket lined with a checkered cloth. Inside are boiled potatoes. Salted. Still warm. Everyone freezes. Jenkins, without missing a beat, bows low. His hands sweep in front of him like he's welcoming royalty. She laughs, a real laugh, full and clear, and walks away without another word. You dig in again. The potatoes have flavor. They have weight. They are real in a way that reconstituted powder could never be. Your chest tightens. You haven't cried in weeks. But now, your eyes sting. You pretend it's the herbs. Because this isn't just a meal. It's contact. It's connection. It's the world pushing gently through the walls of war to remind you that food can be something more than fuel. It can be joy. It can be gratitude. It can be human. When the last scraps are gone, when the bones have been tossed into the grass and the pot has been scraped clean by a dozen spoons, you lie back against the crumbling stone wall. The fire is fading to embers. Someone has found a broken radio and coaxed it to life, just enough to broadcast a whisper of static and half a song. You don't know the tune. Doesn't matter. It's music. And for now, that's enough. You look through the ceiling. Or what's left of it. There are stars overhead. Cold and distant. But beautiful all the same. Your belly is full. Your heart is full. Your canteen still tastes like rust and regret, but you don't even care. Jenkins turns his head, just enough for his voice to carry, "Best meal of my life." You don't hesitate. You answer quietly, truthfully, "Mine too." You are crouched behind a low wall of sandbags, shoulders aching, back stiff, watching the sky shift slowly from bright to bruised. Twilight rolls in like a tired tide, heavy and colorless. The air is thick with the scent of oil and gunpowder, sharp and clinging. It's the end of a long day, the kind that blurs together with all the others. Marching through unfamiliar terrain, digging with whatever you can find, fixing a jammed rifle using your thumbnail and sheer stubbornness. Now it is dinner time. Or, more accurately, it is time to open another can of disappointment that someone in an office once decided could qualify as food. You reach into your pack, rummaging around until your fingers close on the familiar cold metal of a ration tin. You pull it free and squint at the label. Printed in no-nonsense block text are the words, "Meat, chopped, canned." No brand name. No ingredients. No hint of what type of meat. Just the word meat. It might as well say you'll eat it anyway. You huff a tired laugh under your breath, more amused than you have any right to be, and begin peeling back the lid. The smell hits you before the sight does. Not exactly offensive, but something in the greasy aroma makes your stomach tense. When you finally open the tin fully and peer inside, you're greeted by a rectangle of pinkish-gray protein, unnaturally smooth, slick with its own congealed juices. It jiggles slightly as the breeze touches it. Almost like it is just as uncertain about this meal as you are. Jenkins leans over from his usual perch nearby and offers his usual commentary, muttering, "Ah, the mystery meat strikes again." His voice is part sarcasm, part resignation. You reach into your pouch and extract 2 hard crackers. They're already crumbling at the edges, fragile from heat and age, but still technically edible. With slow, deliberate hands, you stack them on either side of a slice of the meat. Cracker. Meat. Cracker. The result doesn't quite look like a sandwich, but you call it one because that's what it's pretending to be. You bite down. The texture is dense and rubbery, forcing your jaw to work harder than it should. The flavor is overwhelmingly salty, with undertones of something you can't identify. You chew, again and again, but the meat holds its shape like it doesn't want to be swallowed. You finally get it down with the help of a long sip from your canteen, which adds a warm metallic tang to the experience. Jenkins claps mockingly, slow and theatrical. Some historians, you remember, have argued that the military may have intentionally made the food unpleasant in order to prevent overeating. Nutritionally, the rations were balanced. They had enough protein, enough fat, enough salt to keep a soldier going. But taste? Texture? Any kind of joy or culinary satisfaction? Completely absent. It was survival food, nothing more. You recall a joke you once heard, something about this sandwich tasting like a boot boiled in gravy and shame. You scoff softly. It wasn't a joke. It was an accurate review. Still, you eat it. Because you have no choice. Because calories are energy, and energy means getting through another day alive. That's the bargain, You smear another portion of the meat onto a cracker and stare at it for a moment. You wonder what animal it might have come from. Probably beef. Maybe pork. Possibly turkey. There's always the chance it's horse. Jenkins, ever the philosopher, suggests it is ambition-flavored. You can't decide whether that makes the sandwich better or worse, then Jenkins produces a miracle. A tiny glass bottle, no longer than your thumb. Tabasco sauce. The real thing. The red glints in the fading light like treasure. He dabs a small drop onto his slab of mystery meat, bites into it, and nods slowly with wide eyes. It's less awful, he says, like a man discovering fire. He passes you the bottle. You accept it with both hands, careful not to spill a drop. You add a healthy splash to your own sandwich. The result is still strange, still unidentifiable, but now it's spicy. Spicy regret is better than plain regret, and you say so aloud. Jenkins grins. You once heard about a soldier who tried melting chocolate from his ration bar, spreading it across his crackers, and layering meat in between. He called it a dessert sandwich. According to the story, he spent 2 days regretting it from inside a medic's tent. Still claimed it was worth it. Another guy built a breakfast burger out of crackers, rehydrated eggs, meat paste, and gumdrops. He was never quite the same afterward. People still talk about it in hushed tones. You've learned to find humor in the absurdity of it all. The rations are infamous. And yet, oddly enough, some soldiers seem to genuinely enjoy them. A few even wrote letters home asking for more. One veteran, so the story goes, opened a sandwich shop after the war and named his signature dish the Ration Special. Customers only ever ordered it once. No one asked for seconds. You take another bite. It's become automatic. Chew. Swallow. Repeat. The sandwich is not just food. It is routine. Repetition becomes comfort. There's something almost meditative in the act of eating something this bland. The flavor may be a crime, but the rhythm brings quiet. You open your accessory pack, that strange collection of military odds and ends. 1 tablet of chewing gum. 1 lonely sheet of toilet paper, folded into quarters. 2 cigarettes. 1 book of matches. 1 sugar cube, slightly damp. And if you are especially lucky, a small mint. You chew the gum first. It's hard at first, then quickly disintegrates into a gritty paste with a hint of mint. Still, it does its job, scraping the remnants of meat flavor off your tongue like an overworked janitor. You light a cigarette. The match flares, then settles into a steady glow. The smoke is rough, acrid, but it fills your lungs and calms your nerves in a way you never thought it could. You sit in the growing darkness, the cigarette in one hand and your mess kit on your lap, feeling not quite satisfied, but not quite empty either. Nearby, someone coughs. Another soldier chuckles over something mumbled and half-heard. Jenkins, determined to amuse himself, starts stacking the remaining crackers into a tower on a rock beside him. You watch, then reach over and help. It's pointless. It's childish. But it's something. You remember reading about the French resistance, stories of them roasting potatoes in hidden fireplaces and slathering them in duck fat. That, you think, is a sandwich worth dreaming about. One day, maybe, you'll eat something like that again. Something rich, flavorful, and prepared without a label that just says meat. You finish the sandwich. Fold the empty tin closed and slip it into your trash pouch. You line up the wrappers from the accessory pack, flattening them neatly like they deserve respect. Your stomach aches a little, a dull pang you can't quite place. It could be indigestion. Or it could be homesickness. Hard to tell the difference anymore. You glance at the final cracker. You snap it in half and offer a piece to Jenkins. He accepts it with exaggerated reverence, holding it between two fingers as if it were the last biscuit on earth. "Best worst sandwich I've ever had," he says with mock solemnity. You both laugh. It's a real laugh. Deep, unguarded, loud enough to echo just a little. No one shushes you. Out here, a laugh is almost as rare as a real sandwich. And sometimes, just as nourishing. The night feels damp and unusually still, like the earth itself is holding its breath. No boots tramping past. No barked commands cutting through the dark. Only the occasional creak of leather and canvas, the subtle rustle of a blanket adjusting over weary limbs, and the faint shuffle of someone turning in their sleep roll. You are wedged deep into a narrow dugout, pressed between packed dirt walls and your own tired body, slowly working your jaw around a stubborn, half-melted piece of ration candy. It is striped red and white like a peppermint, but that's where the similarity ends. It holds no real mint flavor. What reaches your tongue is a confusing blend of generic sweetness, a sharp bite of citric acid, and the underlying tang of old paper. It starts out tasting like air, then shifts abruptly into something overwhelming, like someone tried to compress an entire bakery into a single inch of sugar. But it is candy. And out here, that is reason enough to savor every second. You don't chew. You let it soften slowly, sitting on your tongue like a warm stone in cold water. Jenkins lies curled a few feet away, helmet pulled over his face to block out non-existent light. His breathing is slow, broken occasionally by a snore that sounds like a tired engine refusing to start. From somewhere beyond the dugout wall, you catch the faint sound of pencil on paper. Someone writing a letter, maybe. Or sketching. Or just trying to remind themselves what their own handwriting looks like. Another voice hums quietly under their breath, a tune too soft to recognize but familiar in its loneliness. You lean your head back against your rucksack and feel the candy melt into your bloodstream like a slow fuse of memory and comfort. Earlier today, during mail call, you received a letter wrapped in a tight bundle with others, tied with twine and stained faintly with travel. You peeled it open carefully. The paper smelled faintly of soap and the kind of ink that never fully dries. It was from home. A few pages long. Simple. Some sentences had been sliced away by the censors. Thick black lines where context used to be. A date removed. A place crossed out. But you knew how to read between the absences. You had learned the code of omission, and each empty space said as much as the words that survived. Historians like to debate whether letters like these kept soldiers sane or pulled their minds away from where they needed to be. Some argued they tethered you too tightly to a life that no longer fit. Others insisted they were lifelines, the only thread connecting your past self to your present one. Out here, surrounded by mud, wire, and the distant thud of artillery, you didn't care about the arguments. You cared about the way the loop in the handwriting curved like it always did. You cared about the scent that made you think, just for a second, of a kitchen cabinet back home. Your sister had tucked a few surprises between the folds. A stick of gum, the kind that came wrapped in shiny foil and cracked when bent. 2 butterscotch candies, soft at the edges from travel. You gave one to Jenkins, who nearly cried before stuffing it in his mouth and muttering a thank you he didn't expect you to hear. The second one you still keep, tucked in the inner corner of your shirt pocket, waiting for a day so cold or so wet or so unbearable that only sugar can stand against it. Tonight is not that day. Tonight is for the hard candy you got from your accessory packet. That small crinkly envelope of odds and ends meant to dress up misery in the field. A sheet of tissue-thin toilet paper. 2 cigarettes, usually bent. 1 matchbook that sometimes actually lights. A single square of chewing gum. A sugar cube if you're lucky. And always, some kind of candy. You reach for the second piece. It is a flat caramel, pale and sticky, clinging to its wax wrapper like it knows what fate awaits. You peel it away slowly, careful not to waste a scrap, and pop it into your mouth. It clings to your teeth, to your gums, to the back of your molars. Sweet and smoky. You close your eyes and let it sit there. Like a prayer, your thoughts drift in the haze of sugar and silence. You picture a kitchen you barely remember. One with a wooden table, a chipped mug of tea, a pie on a windowsill. It sounds made up even in your own mind, but the image comforts you. Someone told you once that cliché is just a memory shared by too many people. Maybe that's why you hang on to it. You remember hearing about a guy whose girl used to slip him chocolates in school. He told the story once in a muddy field while cleaning his rifle. Said she would hand it over wrapped in notebook paper, still warm from her coat pocket. He couldn't recall her name. But the chocolate? That stayed with him. Sharp and dark and slightly melted. You didn't share your own story, but it made you think of someone. Not a girl. Just a moment. A time. A flavor that meant you were still human. You reach for your cigarette. The last one. You light it with the match that actually worked. The smoke rises, harsh and dry, cutting through the sweetness in your mouth and painting the night with comfort. You stare at the glowing tip, watching it pulse with each breath. For a moment, it becomes a candle. Maybe it's on a birthday cake. Maybe it's a signal. Maybe it's nothing at all. Jenkins shifts in the dark, grumbling under his helmet, his voice muffled. You eaten candy again? Maybe, you mutter, got one left. You don't answer. You just reach into your pocket, pull it out, and toss it gently his way. You hear the crinkle, the fumbling fingers, the soft sound of the wrapper being peeled back. There is a pause, then a sigh. Tastes like Tuesday, he says. You don't know what that means. Not really. But somehow, you do. You nod. Not that he can see. It doesn't matter. The man in the corner of the dugout starts talking. He tells a story, voice soft and drifting, about a bakery in his hometown. About a girl who worked behind the counter. About the way she always handed him a cookie wrapped in wax paper. He never knew if she charged him. He never asked. He forgot her name, but not the way the chocolate chips melted in the center. You let the last trace of caramel dissolve on your tongue. You lick your lips slowly, already missing the taste. Not because it was good, but because it reminded you that sweetness still exists, even if only in moments. You close your eyes. You lean back against your pack, and then, softly, you smile, just a little. It is wet in a different kind of way here. Not the kind of wet that comes and goes with a passing cloudburst, but the kind that seeps into your very being. Every inch of fabric clings. Every pore drips. It is the kind of damp that settles in your bones and refuses to leave, the kind that turns your skin to paste and your thoughts to fog. This is Southeast Asia, deep in the dense, choking thickets of the China-Burma-India theater, and there is nowhere dry to be found. The jungle presses in on all sides, heavy with heat and sound, and every footstep is a soggy negotiation with the earth. You crouch beneath what passes for shelter, a crooked lean-to stitched from bamboo and a poncho riddled with holes. Your knees tucked close to your chest as you study your evening ration. Rice. Tinned sardines. Crushed crackers that disintegrated in your pocket sometime before noon. Dinner, such as it is, waits in your lap. Your hands work without ceremony. The rice comes first. It's pre-cooked and dehydrated, pressed into a pale mass that resembles packing material more than food. You add a splash of canteen water and stir with the end of your knife. The mixture loosens slightly, but not enough to call it soft. The smell is faint, neutral, like boiled paper. Next comes the sardine tin. You work the key along the edge, each turn releasing a stronger wave of scent. When the lid curls back, the smell hits with full force. Fish oil, rusted tin, and something just a little off. Jenkins groans beside you, pulling his collar over his nose. Smells like ambition died in there, he mutters. you spoon the oily fish onto the rehydrated rice, letting the liquid trickle down like gravy. It glistens in the low light. You eat slowly. The taste is sharp and sour, and the salt stings your cracked lips. It is not pleasant, but it is fuel. It is something your body recognizes as survival, even if your brain recoils. Historians often debate whether the soldiers stationed in this theater were the most underfed of the war. Supplies here moved by mule train, foot patrol, and air drop, each method fraught with failure. You have seen crates drop into rivers, scatter through trees, or shatter on rocks. Sometimes you hike miles only to find a box half filled with tea bags and spoiled canned beans. Other times, nothing comes at all. You adapt. Or you go hungry, a rat scurries overhead, rustling through the makeshift thatch. You do not flinch. Rats are regulars now, old neighbors. Some are bold enough to sit beside you, waiting for scraps. One of your buddies in the unit gave his a name, Lieutenant Crumbs. Jenkins insists they have a truce, some silent pact between man and vermin. You are not sure if he is joking anymore. Your crackers, now reduced to a grainy dust, are stirred into the rice. It thickens the mixture, adds a dry crunch to the otherwise soggy meal. You chew slowly, each bite a compromise between effort and taste. Still bland. Still sticky. Still oddly soothing, you recall the story of a miraculous day when the supply plane dropped cans of peaches instead of beans. A feast, everyone said. Just 4 cans for an entire platoon, but it might as well have been a banquet. One guy even proposed to the supply pilot in a note scribbled on the inside of a spent flare casing. No one ever heard back. But the story gets retold at least once a week. You fish out your accessory pack. The usual contents await: a stick of waxy gum, 2 squares of toilet paper, and a small, round tin marked T. You open the tin and stare at the powder inside. You imagine boiling water. You imagine a ceramic mug. Then you pour a capful of lukewarm water from your canteen into your mess cup and stir the powder in. It clumps and floats like pond scum. You sip it anyway. It is warmish. That counts. Jenkins gnaws absently on a banana leaf he found near the camp's edge. Says it helps keep his jaw muscles strong. You are not convinced, but you say nothing. Instead, you offer him the last sardine. He pauses, then accepts it with the solemnity of a flag ceremony. He eats it in silence. Later, someone in your squad produces a dented tin of meat and vegetable hash. It smells like old gravy and wet dog, but it has potatoes. Soft ones. You are handed a spoonful, and you eat it without question. It is greasy, it is mushy, and it tastes like a memory of food. It is the closest thing to comfort you have had in weeks. Your socks are soaked again, your shirt clings to your back, and the sweat on your forehead never dries. But your belly is no longer empty. The jungle hums its endless chorus of insects and dripping leaves. The frogs croak in rhythm with your heartbeat. Your stomach settles. The ache in your spine is dull but tolerable. You miss fruit. You miss butter. You miss plates and clean forks. You miss the kind of chewing that is done for pleasure, not duty. But right now, in this place, you are fed, and more importantly, you are still here. You never expected to dine like royalty while stationed at the front. Nobody does. The notion itself seems absurd, almost offensive. But tonight, by some twist of fate, some break in the long and brutal pattern, you come surprisingly close. It does not begin with any official announcement. There is no officer standing tall with clipboard in hand, no signal horn or waving flag. Instead, it starts the way these things always do, with a whisper. Quiet, quick, and just believable enough to stir something inside. The message moves through the trench line like smoke threading its way through broken stones. It finds ears and settles in bellies. We hit an enemy supply depot, someone murmurs behind you. Their voice carries a nervous sort of awe. You hear it again 10 minutes later, spoken by a different man with a different accent, this time with added weight. Whole warehouse. Food. Real food. Not powdered. Not dried up bits. Real. The words cling to the air like steam from a warm pot, just long enough to make the idea feel possible. Still, you tell yourself not to hope. Hope is a dangerous thing here. It spoils easily, turns sour before it ever has the chance to satisfy. You have seen too many rumors rot into disappointment. But then, just as your doubt begins to harden, the truck arrives. Its wheels are wet with rain, the axles caked in filth, the engine wheezing like it barely made the journey. But what matters is not the truck itself. It's the cargo it carries. On its flatbed, wooden crates are stacked haphazardly, at impossible angles, some of them scorched black at the edges where flames once licked across them. The metal bands holding them together groan in protest. Splinters jut from the corners. Hinges creak. But then someone finds a crowbar, pries open the first lid, and everything changes. Inside, miraculously intact, sits tinned ham packed in a thick, rich glaze. Fat sausages in neat coils shine under the flickering light. Burlap sacks of flour, cleaner and whiter than anything you've seen in months, sit like buried treasure. Bottles of red wine lie cushioned in straw, the glass dusty but whole. There are paper-wrapped loaves of something that resembles real rye bread. Cloth sacks of sugar sit like pillows of gold. Chocolate bars, dark and dense, are stacked in neat rows, their waxed paper crinkling softly as hands reach for them. Dried apricots. Raisins. Even nuts. The smell alone is enough to make your knees weak, the word spreads again. Only now it is not whispered. It is spoken openly, shouted across campfires and repeated like a prayer. Soldiers who had nearly forgotten the vocabulary of flavor say it out loud again, laughing with disbelief. Real food. Not rations. Not cans of gray mystery. Real, your mess sergeant, a man whose entire vocabulary is normally made up of short, guttural commands and long, disapproving silences, claps his hands together. There is a spark in his eyes that you did not think he had left. His voice rises over the murmuring crowd. Let's have ourselves a proper dinner, gentlemen. He says it like a toast. Like a promise. Like a resurrection, the transformation that follows is nothing short of magic. Within hours, the battered lean-to that serves as the field kitchen becomes something festive. Something alive. Fires are stoked in repurposed oil drums. Pots are scrubbed clean with hot water and sand. Cooks, once grim and weary, now move with rhythm and speed. They stir. They season. They taste and adjust. They joke with each other like people in a real kitchen. One soldier drags out a battered gramophone from behind the tool shed. He winds the crank slowly, and after a few clicks and pops, a waltz begins to float into the air. The notes wobble and skip, but nobody minds. It sounds elegant. It sounds like hope. You find a spot on an overturned ammunition crate and sit down, your mess tin balanced on your lap. Your knees are streaked with mud. Your cheeks are warm from wind and firelight. You take the first bite, the ham is smoky, tender, and just salty enough to make your mouth water before you even finish chewing. The outer edge is slightly crisped, as if brushed with something sweet and broiled over open flame. The mashed potatoes are lumpy, but you would not have them any other way. They are seasoned with whatever the cooks could find, maybe pepper, maybe garlic, maybe just a pinch of actual joy. The gravy glistens. It pools in your tin like something sacred. You dip each forkful carefully, making sure none of it is wasted. Each bite feels like a ceremony. Your chewing slows, not because you are tired, but because you want to stretch the moment out as far as it will go. Some say these rare, accidental feasts served as a kind of emotional reset. Others argue they did more harm than good, because they reminded you of what you no longer had. They made the return to powdered eggs and mystery meat all the more painful. Historians will debate their meaning, their utility, their psychological effect. But none of that matters to you now. All you know is that you are eating something that tastes like care, like effort, like memory. You are not eating just to survive. You are eating to feel. Jenkins drops down beside you. His cheeks are flushed. His uniform is streaked with grease, and his boots are untied. He cradles a bottle of wine like an infant. "It's red," he announces proudly, tipping it toward you. "I think." He takes a long, theatrical gulp, and then passes the bottle to you. You lift it to your lips and sip. The wine is thin and a little sour. But it burns in a good way, warms you from the inside, and you do not cough when you swallow. The meal stretches on. Someone starts setting up candles in empty shell casings, placing them around the clearing like they were centerpieces for a feast. Their flickering light dances across helmets and faces. Another soldier pulls out a harmonica and begins to play. The tune is uneven and shy, but when it bends into a version of Silent Night, others join in. The voices are off-key and tired. But they are there. You hum through a mouthful of sausage. Jenkins taps his foot in rhythm, eyes half closed. Then comes dessert. You almost forgot the word. Dessert. It has not passed your lips in months. Maybe years. A cook, clearly working some kind of minor miracle, has managed to bake something that falls somewhere between a cake and a sweet bread. It is made with flour, water, sugar, and something that might once have resembled an egg. The edges are burnt, the center is dense, but the flavor is unmistakable. There is cinnamon. Real cinnamon. Unevenly mixed, maybe, but real. You chew slowly, mouth full, eyes closed. You think you could eat 100 of them and still be hungry for the comfort it brings. Some soldiers, in rare moments like this, used to write home. Not with letters. Not with stories. But with menus. Scribbled on scraps of cardboard or the backs of ration wrappers. They would list out each dish like it came from a restaurant. Roast ham. Red wine. Mashed potatoes with gravy. Jungle cake with cinnamon. They wrote not to brag. But to remember. To preserve it. To bottle the moment. You take a scrap of paper from your jacket pocket and do the same. You write it all down in block letters. Ham. Potatoes. Gravy. Wine. Cake. Then you pause. You stare at the words. And slowly, beneath them, you add one more line. I think I remember what happy tastes like. After the meal, the rhythm of camp does not return. No one yells orders. No one counts heads. The tools are not collected. The rifles are not inspected. The world slows. Everyone agrees, silently, that this night should remain untouched. You stretch out on the grass. Your hands rest on your stomach. The stars shimmer above, blurred slightly by smoke and your own tired eyes. A breeze brushes over you, soft and rhythmic like a mother's song. Jenkins lies nearby, snoring gently, the wine bottle clutched to his chest. Someone laughs from the other side of the clearing. It is not a loud laugh. Not wild or mocking. Just soft. True. Like something shaken loose from a quieter time, the whole evening feels borrowed. Like it was not supposed to happen. Like it slipped through the cracks of war and landed in your lap. You want to hold it still. You want to live inside it forever. But you know. You know what comes next. Tomorrow there will be hardtack. Powdered eggs. coffee brewed from grit and rust. You will wake up to the same gray smell of canvas and boots and oil, but for now, none of that exists. Tonight, you feasted, not just with your body. With something deeper. Something that lives inside the bones. Something you forgot could be fed. You pull your blanket around your shoulders, let your eyes drift closed, and smile faintly beneath the stars. Your belly is full. Your mind is quiet. Your soul is heavy with something you almost do not recognize, gratitude, and as sleep claims you, one final thought rises slowly to the surface, quiet and persistent. A hope, maybe, just maybe, there will be another warehouse tomorrow. You find yourself standing at the far edge of the crowd, not quite folded into it, but not apart from it either. It's a strange place to be, somewhere between celebration and observation. Your uniform is wrinkled from the long days behind you, the fabric loose and creased at the elbows and knees, and your boots are still thick with layers of hardened mud from the roads you marched. It clings to the soles and crusts the laces like memory made physical. Around you, noise swells in waves. Joy rolls over the streets, wild and unrestrained, a sound more alive than anything you've heard in a long while. All across the city, people surge forward as if released from something invisible. The war is over. They shout it from balconies, scrawl it in chalk on brick walls, scream it until their voices grow hoarse. The announcement came hours ago, but it still has not fully landed in your chest. You feel it in the background of your awareness, but not yet in your breath. The streets are overflowing. Strangers embrace. Flags drape from windows like silk banners in the wind. Couples kiss without hesitation. Children run barefoot through the chaos, dragging ribbons and laughter behind them. A brass band plays nearby, the notes proud and wobbly, the rhythm galloping forward like a heart with too much energy. Above it all, confetti falls like snow, drifting from second-story windows in tiny explosions of color. It hangs in the air, light and slow, floating down like ash after a fire that has finally burned itself out. You do not speak. You do not cheer. You do not raise your arms or your voice. You simply watch. Your arms hang loosely at your sides, your fingers still curled as if gripping something that is no longer there. Then someone walks up beside you, no words exchanged, and places something in your hand. A gesture so simple, it takes you a moment to realize what you are holding. It is a slice of cake, victory cake. You look down at it, unsure if you're dreaming. The sponge is yellow, soft and airy, topped with thick white frosting that glistens faintly in the light. A single blue rosette decorates the corner, slightly squashed and smeared by too many fingers passing it along. It does not look real. You cannot believe it is meant for you. You have not seen frosting in years. Not this kind. Not frosting that came from real eggs and sugar and careful hands. You've only had the make-do version, the powdered type that needed water and hoped to become anything close to edible. And even then, it never truly became frosting. Not really, the cake itself feels like something from a different world. Not one of those ration bars that tried to pass as dessert. Not the improvised concoctions in foxholes built from crushed crackers and whatever fruit spread you could scavenge. This is the kind of cake you remember from long ago, before the trenches and the dust, before everything turned gray. You lift it slowly to your lips and take a bite. The sponge gives way without resistance. It is warm, almost impossibly so, like it had been waiting for you. The sugar is rich. The crumb delicate. The frosting smooth, heavy, comforting. For the briefest of moments, the world goes silent. You close your eyes and chew slowly, deliberately, as if the act itself carries meaning. It feels sacred. Each bite pulls you away from the years of war, tugging gently at the edges of something soft you thought you had forgotten. Jenkins appears beside you. His shirt is freshly laundered, or at least free of visible grime. His face is cleaner than you remember it being in weeks. He nudges your side with the same old ease, the same old familiarity. His crooked grin widens as he gestures toward your cake. Better than that meat slab from Naples, huh? His voice carries that tone of teasing he always used, though his eyes betray the miles they have walked. You try to respond, but your mouth is still full. You nod as you finish chewing, then swallow with a grin of your own. Only slightly, you say, though the truth is beyond measure. There is no comparison. Later, historians would write about this. About the parties in the street and the celebrations that spilled over curbs and across rooftops. They would debate whether these moments of joy were truly healing or just distractions. Some would argue that the noise and motion helped people reconnect after so much loss. Others would insist that what people really needed was quiet. Stillness. Time to understand what had just ended and what might come next, but right now, none of that matters. Right now, you are standing in a sea of movement, and yet it all feels far away. The laughter, the shouts, the clamor, they reach you only as a murmur. You are focused on the slice of cake, on the sugar resting on your tongue, on the way your fingers tremble as they hold the napkin. You chew with purpose, almost with fear, as if trying to memorize the sensation before it disappears. A part of you still does not trust the moment. Does not believe the abundance will last. Because it never has before, you were trained for hunger. For making do. Your hands remember the motions of hiding food, of stashing crackers in your pockets, folding sugar packets into the lining of your sleeves. Keeping jelly packets in your boots. You lived on trades and cleverness. Jelly for soup. Soup for matches. Matches for something else. But now, the tables here groan under the weight of food. Pies shimmer under sugar glaze. Loaves of bread steam as they are sliced. Bottles of soda clink together in baskets of ice. People eat without measuring. Without scales or stamps. Without fear, and then someone walks by carrying a tray of milk. Tall glasses, filled to the brim, droplets clinging to the outside in clear streaks. You take one. You hold it in both hands. The glass is cold. The milk is cold. You sip. It is smooth. Creamy. Clean. No lumps. No grainy powder swirling at the bottom. No metallic taste. No chemical smell. Just milk. Real and quiet and good. You look at the glass like it is something sacred. You think about the meals you had before. Meals that barely counted as such. Dry crackers that turned to dust. Powdered eggs that refused to become solid. Coffee that burned and soothed at once. You think about the lemon candy Jenkins gave you when your boots were soaked. The piece of stolen chicken, eaten under a tarp while it rained. The moments you turned into memories, and the meals you turned into jokes, and somehow, you miss them, because those were moments, too. Moments that mattered. They made you. They shaped your bond with Jenkins. They gave you something to hold on to. Even when it was just a crust of bread or a lukewarm spoonful of broth, it was yours. And it meant something. You finish your cake. The napkin now just a smudge of blue frosting and crumbs. You do not go back for seconds. You want the memory of this one to remain pure. Later that evening, when the streets begin to quiet and the crowds begin to thin, you find yourself in a kitchen. It is not yours. You are not even sure whose home it is. But the door was open, and someone waved you inside. The air is warm. The lighting is soft. The walls are lined with photographs and small signs of a life lived without war. There is a table. There is food. Bread, cheese, slices of ham, a jar of mustard. You make yourself a sandwich. 2 slices of thick, crusty bread. Cheese that smells like damp stone and tastes like something deep. Ham, pink and folded like silk. A small line of mustard, golden and sharp. You sit at the table. You eat it slowly. Carefully. You keep both hands on the bread. You keep your head down. You chew like someone praying. There is no sound of boots approaching. No voices barking orders. No shouts from tents or radios crackling to life. You are not worried about how long the sandwich will last. You are not calculating how to stretch it across 2 meals. You are not watching Jenkins count crackers in the dark. You are just here. You stay at the table long after the sandwich is gone. You do not speak. You do not rise. You light a candle, not because you need it, but because you want to see it flicker. You lift your glass and sip water. It is clear. Cold. Still. No aftertaste. No chemical sharpness. Just water. You sit in the silence, and you remember being hungry. Not only for food, but for peace. For warmth. For the kind of quiet that does not mean danger. For something gentle. Something ordinary, and now, here it is, you do not say thank you aloud. But you feel it settle in you, deep and warm, like something returning to where it belongs. You lean back. Let it all sink in. You breathe, not cautiously, not as preparation, just to breathe. You are full, and you are still here. You sit quietly at the kitchen table as the candlelight flickers against the walls. The room feels suspended in a soft silence. No more crackling radios reporting coordinates. No more boots pacing the hallway. The hum of war has receded, and in its place is something you almost forgot existed: stillness. A stillness so complete it feels like a sound all its own. Outside, the wind moves gently through the trees. It rustles the leaves in slow rhythm, as if nature itself is remembering how to breathe calmly again. You close your eyes. The smells linger in the room: bread, cheese, a faint memory of sugar frosting. They cling to your clothes, your skin, your thoughts. Your hands are steady now. The plate before you is empty, but you leave it there. As if the outline of the meal can remind you that it happened. That it was real. You think back to everything you ate in the war. The hard, the bland, the sour, the surprising. You remember how it made you feel. Not just fed. Connected. Grounded. Present. You breathe in deeply. The air does not carry the weight of tension anymore. It is just air. You feel the warmth in your chest. A quiet rhythm under your ribs. A kind of peace you never thought would come. You let your mind wander. To a bite of chocolate in the jungle. To a piece of mint gum under your tongue. To Jenkins calling sardines, ambition in a can. To the sound of soup boiling on a stolen fire. Let those memories live gently inside you now. Let them rest. They serve their purpose. Sleep begins to settle around you like a soft coat. Your body eases into it. You let go. Let the past dim its edges. Let the future wait. For now, you have warmth. You have flavor. You have quiet, and when you wake, you will wake to light.